Welcome to the South Carolina Legislative Black Caucus Minority Business Forecast, bringing together South Carolina lawmakers and the state's most prominent professionals and minority business leaders discussing topics and issues vital to competitiveness and overall success. Post, share, and tag someone you know that needs information, resources, and advice, because this is a conversation you won't want to miss. But first, please welcome SC DBE Chair, Representative Patricia M. Hennigan.
Good morning and welcome to the 2022 South Carolina Legislative Black Caucus Minority Business Forecast. The state of minority small business is very important to members of the caucus and me. This event is designed to bring together South Carolina lawmakers with the state's most prominent minority business leaders for a frank discussion of issues vital to South Carolina minority business competitiveness and overall production, and link DBEs and minority business with state agencies and departments with independent contractual opportunities. We have assembled a knowledgeable and exciting group of panels and panelists, all given the charge by me to help South Carolina minority business start, expand, and achieve success. I hope you enjoyed the forecast, and please remember, you can always count on me and the South Carolina Legislative Black Caucus to be on the front line fighting for you. I welcome you to the 2022 Minority Business Forecast.
The South Carolina Legislative Black Caucus was founded in 1975 with the mission to improve the quality of life for Black and minority communities in South Carolina. Since its founding under the leadership of Judge Ernest Finney Jr., the caucus has been the catalyst behind significant legislative action and policy changes in South Carolina that brought efforts of justice and fairness for all South Carolinians. Caucus efforts have led to state statute requiring consideration of minority businesses in the process of awarding state contracts, the creation of the Governor's Office for Small and Minority Businesses, the South Carolina Commission of Minority Affairs, and the state's Human Affairs Commission. The caucus is currently comprised of 45 members, including 12 state senators and 33 members of the South Carolina House of Representatives. In January 2021, State Representative Patricia Hennigan assumed the role of chair of the caucus, marking the third woman to be elected to lead the historic organization. Chair Hennigan has announced an active and comprehensive plan for the caucus that centers on increasing overall exposure and opportunities for minority communities across South Carolina. The South Carolina Legislative Black Caucus remains committed to its founding motto: like limbs, we reach toward the sun, but feed from a common root. The caucus remains readily available to serve the citizens of South Carolina, continuously fighting for justice and fairness. Thank you for joining us for the South Carolina Legislative Black Caucus Minority Business Forecast, bringing together South Carolina lawmakers and the state's most prominent professionals and minority business leaders covering topics and issues vital to competitiveness and overall success. Please tag, post, and share this informative conversation filled with important information, valuable advice, and key resources. And now, please welcome the panelists for the HBCU update. Representative Jerry Govan, representing South Carolina House District 95, currently covering Orangeburg counties. Representative Govan is the immediate past chair of the South Carolina Legislative Black Caucus and currently serves on the Education and Public Works Committee, as well as the Operations and Management Committee in the South Carolina House of Representatives. Representative Annie McDaniel, South Carolina House District 41, which covers Chester, Fairfield, and Richland counties. Representative McDaniel serves as the treasurer for the South Carolina Legislative Black Caucus and currently serves on the Education and Public Works Committee and the Operations and Management Committee in the South Carolina House of Representatives. And Dr. Gwyneth Nelson, Executive Director of the South Carolina Institutes of Innovation and Information, whose goal is to assist the state in diversifying and improving its workforce while encouraging students to pursue and increase exposure to industries and careers. And now the HBCU update. Good morning once again. And again, welcome to the South Carolina Legislative Black Caucus Minority Business Forecast. Right now, it's the HBCU update. As you can see, we do have Representative Jerry Govan and Dr. Gwyneth Nelson with us. We are awaiting the arrival of Representative Annie McDaniel. And as soon as we are able to get her on, she's having a little technology challenges, we will add her to the panel. Now, we want to remind you to please post, share, and tag someone that would be benefited from this conversation on your social media. The other thing we want you to do is whether you're watching on YouTube or on Facebook, please, if you have a question or a comment, we would love to hear from you. And we will be sure to get your question answered either today or at a later date and get them to our panelists. Please go to the chat button and please post your comments. We're going to start with you, Dr. Nelson, if you don't mind. This new initiative, SC DBE, tell us what it is, what the mission is, the objectives, and focus, please.
Thank you so much, and thank you for allowing me and inviting me here today. South Carolina Institutes of Innovation and Information, which is also known as SC DBE, is an initiative and vision which was actually inspired by Senator John L. Scott. It focuses on cultivating the 7 states or the 7 HBCUs, their capabilities and contributions for the citizens and residents of the state. South Carolina, as you know, as many of you know, has a very rich history when it comes to educating people of color. And SC DBE actually provides the perfect conduit for partnership between SC DBE as HBCUs, the state businesses and industry, diversifying and improving the state's workforce. Now, SC DBE will also strengthen the HBCUs by building pipelines from each institute directly to support opportunities in the state businesses and industries. And our overall goal is to build and bridge relationship and partnership with businesses. And then also the intention is for the institutes to forge the relationships through research, internship, and other opportunities that will produce better trained workers, students, and workers with lower cost in terms of job training and onboarding. So that's kind of the nutshell of SC DBE.
All right, great. Thank you. I want to stay with you for a moment because this sounds like such an exciting initiative. So tell us about the 7 HBCUs and each of their institutes, because as you were explaining, each of our 7 HBCUs will have different institutes that they're focusing on. Is that correct?
That is correct. And
Okay.
so, for example, with let's start with South Carolina State, because South Carolina State is actually the premier school. South Carolina State, the acronym is BECT, B-E-C-T. And so that has to do with business, entrepreneurship, communications, and transportation. And so that is the focus. For Morris College, it has to do with cybersecurity. And as you know, cybersecurity is an up and coming field that many are interested in. Allen University actually has the School of Civility. And so that's just an example of 3 of the institutes, but every one of the institute has an area of focus that they will concentrate on.
Awesome. Awesome. So what do you believe? And I'd like for both of you to answer this. You first, Representative Govan, what do you believe the role of South Carolina HBCUs is this year in 2022 and in the future?
Well, I think the primary role of any institution of higher learning is to provide not only the training and education for people to fulfill their dreams, but also to move their state, community, and the nation forward. And HBCUs historically have been doing their part. Matter of fact, HBCUs in South Carolina have a tremendous economic impact on the state of South Carolina by generating some $463 million in terms of economic impact alone, creating some 5,000 jobs. And when you look at the lifetime earnings of its graduates, you're talking about billions of dollars, $5.2 billion in terms of earnings lifetime. So when you consider what the significance of these HBCUs and what they're having on the local economy, and in terms of changing lives, then you can see that HBCUs play a critical role in this state and in this nation.
Yeah, absolutely. Dr. Nelson, can you chime in, please, what you feel the roles of HBCUs are now, today, and in the future?
Definitely. I think one of the main roles is for HBCUs to continue to produce and employable, successful, bright individuals, our students, and to continue for them to not only give of their time, talent, and treasure back to their alma maters, but to be, productive citizens, not only in the communities, but in the nation and in worldwide overall. And so, in order, to do that, we definitely need to be sustainable and have funding in order to do that.
Yeah, I want to go to you, Representative Govan. Dr. Nelson talked about funding. What about funding for our HBCUs? Tell us where that stands and how HBCUs can maybe utilize other ways to get funding, if not through the state government.
Well, to be frank about the matter, there have been some systemic issues in terms of the funding of HBCUs in the state of South Carolina and across this country. And I was just perusing and just looking back on some things. We have put money down at South Carolina State University, also in terms of Denmark Technical College. Those are the two public supported institutions. We also, through tuition grants and those kinds of means, provide funding that go to the private side. But the major way that we fund HBCUs in the state supported, is through the general fund. And over the years, South Carolina State University and Denmark Tech have received their set of challenges in terms of getting that part of money increased. This year it's gotten better. The state is flush with cash. But you find on these HBCU campuses great infrastructure needs. And when you compare them with the other universities in the state, the Clemsons, the Carolinas, there is no comparison. The state has been negligent in terms of its efforts. And let me just say this about the private. Those institutions need help too. Of course, we have a general policy of saying that you can't spend state funds for private entities, but through the tuition aspect of it, because the money follows the child, we've been able to do some great things. And so you see institutions like Benedict, Claflin University, and others being the benefactor. And finally, we've been able to send some funds through the lottery to those private institutions, as well as to the South Carolina State University. We still have a long way to go. I don't believe that we're there yet. But again, with time and persistence, I think things will get better.
Representative Jerry Govan, also Dr. Gwyneth Nelson with the South Carolina Institutes of Innovation and Information. Representative Annie McDaniel also joins us. You are watching the South Carolina Legislative Black Caucus Minority Business Forecast. I'm Trey Taylor, and we are in the HBCU update. Representative McDaniel, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Listen, recently we've been hearing more and more about CRT, critical race theory. What exactly is CRT? And if CRT bills become law, what will be the impact? Representative McDaniel, do you hear me? Do you hear me, Representative McDaniel?
Can you hear me?
You are breaking up a little bit. So I would ask that we, are you back, Rep McDaniel? All right, we're going to wait for Representative McDaniel to get the technology issues straight, and then we're going to go to you, Representative Govan, because I really want to talk about this. As a former educator, we have seen how hard you have fought to keep Denmark Tech up and running. Can you explain what some of the issues they were facing and how you came to a solution for it? I tell you, this may, you may be able to share some things to help some other schools and some other situations, people that are going through similar problems. Can you share that?
Well, yeah, that's a great question. It's what I would describe as systemic neglect. Systemic neglect because those institutions, Denmark Tech is not receiving the financial assistance that it needs. It's in a rural area, a critical area, actually a social-economic desert in the state. And when I say that, that's because it's in a rural area, rather isolated, and that area of the state that lacks infrastructure, that lacks economic development, and those other things that really cause a community to thrive. And this institution, which was created really as a result of those individuals who were coming back in the 70s, were coming back from overseas, needed a place to basically be educated in terms of skills and trades, etc. And rather than go to the other technical colleges, the state decided to change the mission of Denmark vocational to that of a technical school, and then failed to provide the resources for it. And so this institution, this proud institution that has produced many of the folk that you see now in the trades area, then became a technical college. And instead of providing the resources for it to thrive, we just practiced neglect over the years. And so as we transitioned to the period where we're in now, the 80s, the 90s, and moving up to the 2000s, then of course we saw more competitiveness for students, programs, and things that needed these young people are seeking in order to be competitive in the global job market. And instead of putting that infrastructure in place at places like Denmark Tech, they did it in other places, like the Williamsburg Techs, the Denmark Techs, didn't get the resources, money, or the attention, and so they fell on some hard times. And so what we spent, the Legislative Black Caucus did, we stepped in. They wanted to change the mission of the school again. They wanted to close it. We stepped in, we said no, and by the grace of God, we were able to prevent that. But that took a team effort. And I would go further and say it's not just the Denmark Techs. If you look at our other HBCUs, and I think it's important to note the contributions that these institutions make in terms of providing not only economic leadership, political leadership, but general community leadership across the state and nation. This is where all our leaders come from. I'm a proud HBCU alum. And so I think we have to look at that as well.
Yeah, thank you, Representative Govan. Dr. Nelson, I see you down there shaking your head. Is this something that you feel SC DBE can help, especially, as Representative Govan said, a lot of these schools, a lot of these HBCUs are in rural areas. You say what?
Definitely. When you talk about in the rural area, for example, Voorhees College is in a rural area. And so their initiative actually with SC DBE is to focus on the rural initiative and to bring back the community as a vital component of increasing the vitality of institutions like Voorhees College. For example, their institute not only will focus on the rural development, but also in working with Dwayne Smiley, who is the director of the institute, they have a whole initiative that brings back the community. So for example, they plan on building a computer lab. And so once you think about a computer lab, you automatically think about a computer lab for the students of Voorhees College. But they stated that they just don't want to have a computer lab for the students, but also the community, because what we found is in rural areas, broadband is not as accessible to students and their families as one would like to think. So that is a great initiative that, that they're working on, is being able to have the community, the elementary students, the high school students, to be able to come on campus and be able to have broadband, which is so vitally important to the success of students at all ages.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Gwyneth Nelson, also Representative Jerry Govan. It's the HBCU update with the South Carolina Legislative Black Caucus Minority Business Forecast. Good morning, I'm Trey Taylor. Please post and share this information out. We have a great conversation going on about HBCUs, and we have got to get this message to the masses. Don't forget that if you have a question or a comment, please put it in the chat and we'll be glad to get it to our panelists. We're awaiting Representative Annie McDaniel to come back on. There she is. Representative McDaniel, thank you so much for working through technology challenges. Look, I always say it's the reason for everything good and bad. So thank you so much for continuing to work through it. I do want to ask you, while you're on, about CRT. I don't know if you heard my question before. We've been hearing more and more about critical race theory. It's called CRT. Many may know it as that. Can you explain exactly what CRT is? And if CRT bills become law, what will be the impact?
Yes. And can you hear me now, Troy?
Yes, ma'am. We sure can.
Okay, great. I had to come outside. I'm in Chester. I had a delegation meeting, and God knows I did not realize how bad the internet was here. So,
which is a whole nother issue in South Carolina.
Absolutely. I had a chance to experience it firsthand. But again, thank you. And thank you to the Legislative Black Caucus. I've been doing some research on critical race theory, and I'm going to have to talk from my head because my notes are inside. But critical race theory is really came out of Project 16, I think 1619, where some academians and journalists were doing some research and looking at where race intersects with various systems, and looking at how particularly African Americans, but other minorities have been negatively impacted by systems themselves. And we saw results of it just with COVID-19, when we saw the disparities with healthcare, with our school systems. We don't adequately fund the school systems. Well, since that started coming up, it shined a light on some of the problems that are occurring within the United States. And then evolved this national phenomenon that, they're blaming all this on Caucasians. They're blaming all this on white people. And so this national, I guess, group, more of the Republican persuasion, came with the notion that we were blaming, and that there are teachers, whenever there was any teachings regarding like slavery, regarding the Holocaust, and any of those uncomfortable Jim Crow periods of times that happened, that children were felt to feel blame. And I think that some of the children were probably going home, asking questions. Another thing is with all the police killings. So with all of these things evolving, came this expansion of critical race theory and all these various definitions. Now, depending on who you talk to, you may get a different definition from what I just told you. But it came out of, like I said, academians, and it's mostly taught in law school. Well, it's passed in several states, and I would encourage anyone to Google. There's a lot of information out there that you can find out about critical race theory. But the states throughout the United States have been trying to get this legislation passed. And what we found that it is possibly can do, and how it can impact us in South Carolina, is teachers are going to be afraid to teach the truth and the real history about what has happened in the state of South Carolina. And we know there are some things that have occurred that we're not proud of, but it still does not mean we shouldn't teach those things. And many of us, I know I have experienced some things in my life that have come out of racism, but in order for me to be able to not blame anyone, I had to talk about it. I had to share it with people. I had to hear how it evolved and how it came about. and how we are trying to move beyond those unfortunate things that occurred in our history. And so we had 5 bills to coming for the Education Committee, and we had testimony coming for 3 days. We had approximately 110 people to speak, and the vast majority of them, based on my analysis, showed that they did not want any of those bills to pass. Teachers want to be able to freely be able to teach the history, be able to ask the questions, be able to help the students work through any quote word that we heard a lot was making students feel uncomfortable. So teachers want to be able to have that conversation with children so that they can invoke their critical thinking skills, and they can think for themselves and make their own have their own feelings about what happened. But by no means is it to make anyone feel any shame. But in order for us to move forward and become a great state and a greater United States, we have to talk about those things. We can't erase them. We can't act like they never occurred. And I think if you go to some places now, you'll probably find where it's still going on. And if we talk about it, we can help those areas so that they can also try to get beyond those unfortunate things so everyone can feel and live a nice, free life in this democracy. Right. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. So you mentioned that, several, things were happening in the committee as far as critical race theory. You guys heard from several people. So what is, when and if it becomes law, what's the process? Where are you guys in the process of evaluating it to see whether or not it will become law, and what will be the impact? And after you, Representative McDaniel, I want to ask you the same thing, Representative Govan, as a former educator and being on the CRT committee. Go ahead, Representative McDaniel.
Yes. What we did this time, which was a little different, we kind of established a precedent. We didn't assign it to a.
You all right?
Yeah, somebody decided they want to drive by. but what we did this time is it wasn't assigned to a specific committee. The entire Education Committee acted as a committee of one, and we heard the testimony coming from various individuals. And ironically enough, tomorrow night, after a session tomorrow evening, 1 hour after adjournment, we will again start talking about those bills. And there'll be a bill that will be proposed to see whether or not the committee want to advance that bill as a bill coming from the committee. I didn't see a number on it, so I'm thinking that bill will be introduced in the House if it passes, if the committee so decides. And then it will still have to come back to the committee because it has to be assigned a bill number. And Representative Govan's been around a little longer than me, so he'll correct anything that I may have not communicated. But when it comes back before the floor and we debate it, if it passes, then it will go over to the Senate. And then if it passes the Senate and there are no changes, then it will become law. But if the Senate make changes, then it will have to come back to us. And then if we do not accept those changes, then it'll go to conference committee, which I think they have until April. We have until April 7th to advance that bill and get it out. So it's on a fast track. So that's pretty much the process. And I've received quite a few phone calls over the weekend, and there's still a lot of opposition to us even moving forward, period.
Yeah.
They feel that we need to take some time. We need to study this a little more. We need to make sure that we're hearing from the teachers, and we're not making teachers afraid to teach the true history of the state of South Carolina for fear of some of the penalties. And I think the most harshest penalty is funding being withheld from school districts.
Yeah. Representative Annie McDaniel joins us along with Dr. Gwyneth Nelson with SC DBE. Representative Jerry Govan also on the South Carolina Legislative Black Caucus Minority Business Forecast. It's the HBCU update. Representative Govan, you're a former educator. You're the highest ranking member of the Education Committee. And recent news is that you are seeking to be the superintendent of education. So I'm sure you have lots to say about CRT, and we'd love to hear it.
Well, I think my colleague Representative McDaniel has done an excellent job in terms of explaining it succinctly. This is a boogeyman that was created by the operatives within the Republican National Committee, basically to drum up support in their base. And, this critical race theory has been around for over 40 years. It's an academic, and I think Dr. Nelson can speak to that. This is something that basically is driven through academia. And what they talk about is the systemic impact of racism on public policy. In a nutshell, if I'm not mistaken, and they generate that kind of thought. We need to have that kind of dialogue because when you look at how racism has impacted minorities in this country, everything from redlining in terms of housing, on including what we just got to talking about earlier about funding of HBCUs and minority institutions, and things of that nature, or public education, then these are legitimate things to talk about, healthcare, etc. But this is on the higher ed level. There is no critical race theory, and we had the testimony, and Representative Daniel can attest to this, at the K-12 level in our public school systems. And so this is a boogeyman that's been generated and created, and you can see the political impact. This is what I call purposeful politicizing of public education in this state, to drive agendas because folks don't have nothing else to talk about or that they can point to that they've done for the people. And so you see in cases like in Virginia, the race between Youngkin and McCullough, in which Terry McCullough lost that race. They use critical race theory as one of those things just to make people angry and get parents all caught up in this stuff. And so tomorrow, as Representative McDaniel has stated, when we get ready to go an hour and a half upon adjournment, the House Committee on Public Education is going to convene. And we just got sent a bill that the chairman has come up with, calling herself combining all those other bills, because there were how many, Representative McDaniel? I think it was five other pieces of legislation that are boilerplate legislation copied and sent, and they're passing this out all over the country in terms of to the state legislatures, and having them introduce these bills. And basically, if you look at the timing of it, it's about primary time, and what they're trying to do is basically, I think, create division and confusion with the electorate for political purposes. That's the bottom line, and we got to stop this. Politics should not be about or intervene or come into conflict for what's really important, and that is the education of our children. We need to take politics out of education. Yeah. And I just think it's a crying shame what we're doing, because we're doing a disservice to our kids. We're getting parents off the point, off the mark, when we should be forming relationships with families in order to do what's in the best interest. We're not doing it.
Representative Jerry Govan, Representative Annie McDaniel. Dr. Nelson, I'm going to come to you in a minute. I just want to remind the audience that South Carolina Legislative Black Caucus is a nonpartisan, issue-focused group. It's our job to bring these types of issues to the forefront. So we thank all of you for talking about it. Dr. Nelson, Representative Govan, we were kind of on the same page. I was thinking, even though this is not an SC DBE issue per se, I do want to get your opinion as an educator on CRT and where it should be taught. Do we teach it to our little ones in elementary school, middle school, high school, or is this something that needs to be addressed on a college level?
I think it's definitely something that needs to be addressed on all levels. I think it's such an important issue. If you think about it, the 7 HBCUs that we have in South Carolina currently produce more than 50% of all Black college graduates in this state. And so in order to address exactly what we're talking about today, it definitely needs to become more aware of that it is an issue. And I think not only race, but you think about sexism also. the Black female college graduates that we have. We talk about the college graduates are the females, are our future. And even with Benedict College, which is one of the premier schools in South Carolina State that graduates a lot of females. And so I think you think about sexism and racism, and I think that they definitely go hand in hand. So it needs to be taught across elementary all the way, even at higher education.
Yeah, you're watching the South Carolina Legislative Black Caucus Minority Business Forecast. This is the HBCU update. Representative Jerry Govan joins us, also Representative Annie McDaniel, and Dr. Gwyneth Nelson with SC DBE. I want to talk a little bit about the General Assembly's role, Representative Govan, and I want you to chime in first. What do you believe the General Assembly's role is in higher education?
Well, the General Assembly's role is to provide funding and support structure in terms of to our higher educational institutions. In our case, we primarily elect the board of trustees of the various public institutions in the state. And in addition to that, we provide funding with the general fund in terms of funding education, providing for public education, public higher education. This year, for example, in the House budget, which we recently passed, we are putting somewhere along the tune of $433 million into these colleges across the state to improve and address infrastructure needs that have existed. I mean, you got pipes and systems, heat and air systems at these colleges and universities that they can't raise money for on their own in terms of falling apart. And so the state is going to provide additional funding to help them meet those needs. You want your students to be in institutions in which they have great surroundings to learn in, to educate in, because that also plays a role in terms of the quality and the atmosphere play a role in learning as well. So our job is to provide resources to address infrastructure, personnel, and other needs, and also to provide assistance to middle-class working families out there who, and that's why the public institutions were created in this country, because everyone can afford to send it to a private institution. And institutions, education is becoming the purview who can afford it. So we found a mechanism to do that. The state of South Carolina has at times lagged behind the rest of the country in terms of taking care of needs here. We're getting better, but we still have a lot of particularly valuable institutions.
PWIs don't seem to have the funding issues that HBCUs have. In general, in South Carolina, are they doing something different, right? Is there something that these colleges are doing that HBCUs need to replicate, mimic? I'll ask you first, Representative McDaniel, and definitely I want to ask you, Dr. Nelson.
I think part of it, Trey, ironically enough, falls straight with this critical race theory, and the fact that we as a state are choosing to not adequately fund our HBCUs, and particularly South Carolina State, which is a public HBCU. When I looked at the budget this year and I saw the funds that were being allocated, I could only say, But I would just want to throw a plug in and say, Trey, that it is a direct result of how we vote. We've got to go out and vote and make sure that we elect people who share our ideals and will support those things that are best for the state of South Carolina. So the other thing is the giving. The alumnus, when they leave schools, I think in the WPIs, they contribute a whole lot at a greater level than they do our HBCUs. Mm-hmm. But then that's also a result of the system, because the graduates of the WPIs can often go find better jobs and make more money than our graduates from the HBCUs. So they don't have the money to give back. So it's like a ripple effect. One thing impacts another, one thing impacts another. So I just hope that we will learn as a state, and hopefully, if nothing else, come out of critical race theory and these bills that we're discussing, that we will understand and we will see that there are a lot of systemic things that are going on that is holding minorities back, not because they choose to be held back, but because they have no control.
Yeah, we've got about 5 minutes left, but Dr. Nelson, I definitely want you to chime in on this question, please.
Right. And I think to piggyback on what you said, I think it's very crucial and critical for our alums to give back. I think that we do have a high percentage of alums at certain HBCUs that give. However, I think that it needs to be improved. When you go to foundations and corporations, one of the first things that they ask is, what are the alums giving? What's your percentage of alumni giving? What's the giving rate? And so that's looked at. And, you know, a lot of times we think that it has to be a large amount. But if you have over 25,000 in your database, alums in your database, and let's say each one give $100 a year or $5 a month, that would make a significant impact on scholarships, on us being able to recruit and retain the brightest students and faculty and staff. So I think it starts at home and internally, and then we would be able to ask for more externally.
Yeah, that sounds like a great initiative that someone should start, just encouraging alums from HBCUs to give what you can, to give what you can. As you say, Dr. Nelson, a little bit goes a long way. I want to ask one more question, and I'm going to start with you, Dr. Nelson. Do you think HBCUs should recruit more non-ethnic students?
You know, thanks for putting me on the spot. You know, I didn't graduate from an HBCU, but my passion is with HBCUs because we have a rich history of educating. I don't think it's necessary to recruit others. I think there's such a need and a want to be able to still provide education for our own. And I know we have some of the brightest students that come from high schools into the HBCUs. If we just start there and be able to retain and recruit, I think that we would solve most of the problems and be able to find the funding dollars to do that. I think we have our own inner circle that we can focus on.
Yeah, Representative Govan, I couldn't tell if you were shaking your head affirmatively or negatively.
I was. We need to stay on point. We don't need to change who we are and what we have been about or our missions. HBCUs were created during a point in time and period in which we couldn't go anyplace else.
That's right.
Or nobody else really wanted us. And so it specifically addressed the need to create a level of professional individuals with advanced degrees that will go out and service the needs not only of our communities but of this country. And it's obvious in terms of when you look at what these HBCUs have produced, whether they be public or private, and how those individuals have contributed to society. They've done more than their job. And so I don't think we have to let that down. I'll put North Carolina A&T North Carolina A&T's engineering program up against any of the others any day, and they'll come out fine. South Carolina State, its educational program, they'll come out fine. So I think we just give people a choice, regardless of whether you're black or white, Hispanic, Native American, or whatever. If you see a program that's there, and I think that's the key, we need to provide them with the resources that they can provide, high quality programs that attract students, and those students will make those choices themselves. And it won't be based upon whether it's a black institution or white institution. It'll be based on where they feel comfortable and where they can get the most bang for their buck.
Yeah, thank you, Representative Jerry Govan. Closing statements, Annie McDaniel, Representative McDaniel, we're going to start with you with closing statements.
Okay, thank you so much, Trey. And again, Thank you to the Legislative Black Caucus, which I am a member of, for having me and putting on this event. But I just want to very quickly on that last question. I just want to state that our HBCUs do need to stay who they are. I went to the University of South Carolina, but as I attend homecomings with my friends that went to HBCUs, there is an aspect that I truly miss.
It's a difference.
So anyone listening, I do encourage you to take advantage of our HBCUs. But just in closing, I would just like to say to all of the listeners, please get involved in our voting process. Please go out to vote. We have a census, so your district may have changed. Please take a look at your voter registration card. Make sure you know before you go to the polls what district you're voting in and who you're voting for. And shout out to the HBCUs. Keep doing what you're doing. We love you. We appreciate you. And when I try to give back, Trey, I try to give back to the HBCUs before I give back to the University of South Carolina. And I'm sure they understand why. So thank you.
Yeah. Representative Govan, Dr. Nelson, I'm going to save you for last, if you don't mind.
That's fine.
Representative Govan, final statement.
We just want to say thank you. This has been a great event. I truly believe that we come together and stay focused on the facts and make students our priority, whether it be K-12 or at the higher ed level, then we'll make great citizens in this country. And so we just encourage folks to stay engaged. We can't afford to fall asleep at the wheel on this or any other issue, and an informed and educated population. That's how you avoid tyranny. And so I'm proud of what you're doing today, and thank you for allowing me to be a part of this effort.
Thank you, Representative Govan. Dr. Nelson, can you give final statements, and then before your final statements, give us again a summary of what SC DBE is, some of the member schools, what their institutes are, and then your final statements, please, for those who may have joined us late.
Mm-hmm. So South Carolina Institutes of Innovation and Information, which is also known as SC DBE, is an initiative and a vision of Senator John Scott. And basically it is to bring the 7 HBCUs together. Each institution offers an institute that focuses on cybersecurity. We have rural development at Voorhees. Here at South Carolina State, which is the lead school, has to do with business and transportation. Benedict is BEST, business, economic, and so each one has an area that is focused on. And basically, we found that if you come to the table collectively, that you're able to ask for more of corporations and foundations if they see that what you have to offer, and then maybe they can fit the niche that each institute has. And so our goal is to be able to continue to retain and recruit bright students, not only bright students for these institutes, but then faculty and staff, so that you can get research dollars that will assist in the overall goal.
All right, great, awesome. Any news coming out of SC DBE that the community needs to be aware of?
Yes, well, Morris College actually is cybersecurity, and they are having their event in April. That is April the, Trey, what's the date on that? You know.
It's April 12th.
Yes, it's April the 12th. So their rollout is then. Voorhees is actually having their rollout sometime in June. We talked about theirs. Theirs is the rural development. And so we are really making strides with this. It is a new initiative, but you know, we are hoping that others will get involved, not only of their time and talent, but also their treasure, which is very important to sustain the HBCUs. It all comes back to funding dollars. Sometimes we don't want to think of that in that manner, but that's the reality of it. In order for us to be sustainable just across the board, we need funding dollars. And that's what SC DBE, that's what we're hoping will be a large part of the initiative for this.
Awesome. Representative Govan, we had a question come in for you, if you don't mind. What are your thoughts on economic development and HBCUs?
As a former head of the Small Business Development Center at South Carolina State, I had to get that in. No, I think it's absolutely critical. I don't think you can separate education from economic development. And so I think you have to create a seamless transition, education from the cradle to the grave, if you really want to move this state and this country forward. And if you look at the most advanced nations on the planet in terms of where they are and where we are, you see that they've begun to make that transition. And so I think economic development is critical. So you have your colleges, as Dr. Nelson has stated, that have tremendous resources that you can develop that can assist small businesses, entrepreneurial development, etc. And so we just have to find a way of bringing all these people, bringing all these pieces together at the table and focus on community needs. So I think it's definitely should be a priority, and certainly one thing I'm going to be working on, particularly if I'm at the state superintendent of education.
We had another question come in, ladies and gentlemen, about funding for HBCUs. And I want to know your thoughts about what the responsibility is, the question says, is of the state to support the state schools, and should schools do more fundraising themselves? What's the feasibility of them focusing on fundraising themselves outside of asking for alumni support? Representative McDaniel, do you want to chime in, you or Dr. Nelson?
Yes, I most definitely think that anything that we can do ourselves, as Dr. Nelson stated earlier, definitely helps as far as fundraising and direct giving. But I think that the state can do more. We do give some to the HBCUs, but I think we can do a whole lot more. But again, that goes back to our elected officials and their mindset. So we need those graduates and supporters of the HBCUs to make contact with those elected officials, your representatives and your senators, and let them know that you would like for them to give more and do more. The federal government sends some funds down, but we would like for them to do more as well. So it's all about the advocacy, making contact and lobbying for what you desire. And we know our HBCUs need more. So we're asking everyone to contact their elected officials and ask them to put more in the budget.
Can I say one thing to that?
Yes.
The other thing we can do is we can get out of the way as a General Assembly. And I'm give you a good example. South Carolina State University, needs most of the alum that are doing well. Not that there aren't some that are doing well here. A lot of our really financially secure folk or in other areas had to leave South Carolina to seek opportunity. It would be great if some of those individuals could sit on our board, but we tried for years to have the legislation changed to allow those folks so we could have individuals on the board that could bring more resources into the state, to the institution. But we keep getting blocked at the state level. I just think that that's ludicrous, but it's happened. And so I think that in some cases, public policies that are being promulgated don't benefit our smaller institutions. The lottery disposition of how we disperse the lottery funds, we gave $300 million to the so-called research institutions, and we just neglected to a great extent our HBCUs. We gave them some money, but it wasn't that much. And so when you see all this expansion at MUSC, USC, Clemson, then a lot of that is due to the lottery, but we were kind of left away from the table. So I think there are some things we can do if we can just simply level the playing field and get out of the way.
I want to thank Chair Patricia Moore Hennigan for texting some additional questions. This is the last question to Dr. Nelson. How feasible is it for schools to do their own fundraising? Do they even have the skill set? That's a skill set.
Oh, definitely. I come from a background in fundraising. And so it is a skill set. There's a lot of training and knowledge about fundraising that is available and readily available to those who want to learn. But fundraising is definitely needed at HBCUs and across the board. I've done fundraising at HBCUs and PWIs. I think it takes a collaborative effort of individual donors, foundations, I think grants, and alums. So I think you have to incorporate all of those. By no means are we saying that it has to strictly or the majority come from the alums, but as I stated before, it starts internally, because when you go externally, they want to know, what are the alums doing? Right. So fundraising, I think it was a report done a few years ago about college presidents, especially HBCU presidents. It used to be that a large part of that, what college presidents did, was academia. Now, a large part is fundraising, and that's getting out there, meeting with constituents and potential donors and major donors. So that is the heart of, I think, higher education overall is fundraising.
Yeah, that's interesting, because that totally shifts how you hire staff for these colleges. Thank you so much. Dr. Gwyneth Nelson with SC DBE, Representative Jerry Govan, Representative Annie McDaniel, and Representative McDaniel, thank you so much for taking the time and effort to come outside, get a good connection, and join us for today's session.
And thank you.
Thank you all so much. Thank you so much for joining us for the HBCU update from the South Carolina Legislative Black Caucus Minority Business Forecast. Please continue to post and share this webinar out to someone someone you think may want to hear this conversation. It would be advantageous for them. And also, please keep watching, because coming up, we are going to go to the Minority Business Roundtable discussion. It's the South Carolina Legislative Black Caucus Minority Business Forecast. I'm Trey Taylor, and we'll be right back with the next panel.
The South Carolina Legislative Black Caucus was founded in 1975 with the mission to improve the quality of life for Black and minority communities in South Carolina. Since its founding under the leadership of Judge Ernest Finney Jr., the caucus has been the catalyst behind significant legislative action and policy changes in South Carolina that brought efforts of justice and fairness for all South Carolinians. Caucus efforts have led to state statute requiring consideration of minority businesses in the process of awarding state contracts, the creation of the Governor's Office for Small and Minority Businesses, the South Carolina Commission of Minority Affairs, and the state's Human Affairs Commission. The caucus is currently comprised of 45 members, including 12 state senators and 33 members of the South Carolina House of Representatives. In January 2021, State Representative Patricia Hennigan assumed the role of chair of the caucus, marking the third woman to be elected to lead the historic organization. Chair Hennigan has announced an active and comprehensive plan for the caucus that centers on increasing overall exposure and opportunities for minority communities across South Carolina. The South Carolina Legislative Black Caucus remains committed to its founding motto: like limbs, we reach toward the sun, but feed from a common root. The caucus remains readily available to serve the citizens of South Carolina, continuously fighting for justice and fairness. Thank you for joining us for the South Carolina Legislative Black Caucus Minority Business Forecast, bringing together South Carolina lawmakers and the state's most prominent professionals and minority business leaders covering topics and issues vital to competitiveness and overall success. Please tag, post, and share this informative conversation filled with important information, valuable advice, and key resources. Please welcome the panelists for the Small and Minority Business Roundtable discussion. Representative Jermaine Johnson, South Carolina House District 80, representing Kershaw and Richland counties. Representative Johnson currently serves on the Rules Committee and the Medical, Military, and Municipal Affairs Committees in the South Carolina House of Representatives. Mo Brown is the managing consultant of Process First Consulting Firm. Mo previously served as the president of the University of South Carolina Association of Lettermen. He was a board member on the U of SC Board of Visitors Board and a former Democratic nominee for the U.S. Congress in South Carolina. And Angela O'Neill. She serves as the director of Nextra Solutions and manages the firm's attorney and client electronic discovery and document review needs. Prior to her leadership position at Nextra, Angela worked as a contract attorney and team lead at a national electronic discovery firm. And now, our Small and Minority Business Roundtable discussion.
Good Monday afternoon, and thank you again so much for joining us for the South Carolina Legislative Black Caucus Minority Business Forecast. It's the Small Minority Business Roundtable. As you can see, our panelists are here. Mo Brown, Representative Jermaine Johnson. We're waiting for Angela McNeil to get her technology together. I tell you, I just said in the last panel with Representative McDaniel, technology is the reason for everything good and bad.
That's right.
So,
yes, it is.
But thank you, gentlemen. It's great when it works.
So, yeah, but it's terrible when it's broken.
Man, what? Because we rely so much on it. But gentlemen, thank you again so much for joining us. As soon as Angela gets her technology issues corrected, we will add her to the conversation. I want to ask first for both of you, what would you say is the outlook for South Carolina minority businesses in 2022? Mo, I'm going to start with you.
All right. Thank you for the question. It's great to be here. Good to see you both.
Thank you.
It's been a while, but
Yes.
good to see you both. South Carolina's faced a similar challenge and opportunities that we've seen all across the country, particularly coming off the pandemic. In South Carolina, access to capital, training, education, minority representation in small business follows a lot of the trends that you see on a national level. But in South Carolina specifically, you're looking at roughly, in 2021, roughly 13% of small businesses were owned by minorities, whereas the population of South Carolina is 30%. And so as we're looking forward into this year and how do we close those gaps, we got to look at what type of business they typically own. So looking at minority business in South Carolina, retail, food, beverages is typically where we fall into. And again, those were the industries that was affected the most coming off the pandemic. And so looking into the summer months where you're going to have people going out, again, doing the tourism and restaurants, et cetera, we need to make sure that these folks are being supported as we move forward in a way that is really intentional. But also we need to be focusing on how can we grow beyond just these industries. As a former project manager, I worked at South Carolina Department of Commerce for 6 years, and I worked over 150, 160 projects. And out of all of those projects, I can recall maybe working with 2 to 3 minority-owned companies during that period of time. And so these are your larger companies that's going to get your minority contracts and opportunities. That's going to be the level to be able to grow. And so as from a state perspective, we do a really good job of bringing in the Boeings and the small to medium-sized companies through the incentives that we have in place and the overall business climate that we have. The question then becomes, how can we be more intentional to grow homegrown companies here in this state, through the incentives, through the business climate that we have. So, looking at South Carolina, there's a lot of opportunities for us to be able to fill these gaps moving forward. But that being said, as everyone across the nation had to take a step back and look at where do I go from here during the pandemic and what's next for us. There's a lot of entrepreneurs that came out from that. And so I think these forums that we have in right now and the ones that I've seen going on provides an opportunity for us leaders to be able to educate these individuals with the opportunities that they can from small business and being entrepreneurs and through support that we have. So it's a lot of mixed bags. Again, we are in a similar situation that we're seeing across the country, but we do have an opportunity to continue to grow.
Yeah, thank you, Mo. You said a couple of things that I want to circle back on. One, the pandemic, and two, contracts. I want to get to that in a minute. But Angela, thank you so much for joining us. We're so glad that you were able to join us today. We appreciate it.
All right, thank you. And technically it was technology and not what I do on a daily basis. It was a camera. Salute. I don't do IT, but my IT man came to fix it for me. But it was technology and not what I do on a daily basis.
It's okay, girl. We already said technology is great when it works, and it's
right. Right.
Yeah, we're glad you're here.
Thank you.
Yes. Jermaine, I want to ask you the same question about the outlook for South Carolina minority businesses in 2022.
Yeah, and thank you all for having me here. It's great to see all my people on here this morning. With the outlook, and I agree with a lot of the stuff that Mo said, and I feel very well and very good about the outlook going forward. And the reason why I feel good is because companies now, coming out of the pandemic, coming out of the George Floyd situation that we had, companies are being so much more intentional about their diversity and inclusion. And they're reaching out, and I know what I do consulting right now. I have my own small business, and companies are specifically reaching out, so I can help them out with, how they can attract that certain clientele, or how I can help them to bring in the best and the brightest, maybe individuals who have been looked over. We are doing such a better job at that. And these larger companies, they're willing to listen now. Back in a few years ago, they weren't willing to listen to you. They were like they felt like they were doing what they were doing. But now, they're actually actively reaching out to individuals like myself who can assist, who can speak, who can say what needs to be done, who can talk about these marginalized communities or these marginalized individuals who have never had an opportunity or never had a seat at the table or never knew how to get a seat at the table. So with 2022 going forward and going forward, I truly believe that we are headed in the right direction. Obviously, it's not going to be perfect. There's going to be some other things that we'll be talking about, on here, like access to capital and things like that, to make sure that we're expanding these things. But you've got to understand that we are coming out of a pandemic. And right now in South Carolina, we've got more jobs available than we have people to fill them.
Yeah.
And because we have a situation like that with a labor shortage, it needs to be all hands on deck so that we can help all these businesses out there. And, fortunately for small businesses and small minority businesses, that increases opportunities for us because they have to look everywhere. They can't just rely on the old faithful. They've got to come everywhere. And that creates opportunities for us to say, hey, listen, I'm here. I've been doing this. I'm tapped into this community. This is an untapped resource that's here. So look at us and look what we can do and what we can bring to your industry, and allows these big corporations to take chances on small minority-owned businesses to say, hey, listen, we can do everything that somebody else is doing.
Yeah, I think you made such a great point, Jermaine. One of the things I think that came out of the pandemic that was good for minority businesses is they are more often open to diversifying. They see that they've got to be able to be diverse to survive. Angela, what do you think? How has the pandemic negatively and positively affected small minority business?
Well, I think I want to piggyback on what Mo and Jermaine have said, is that the one thing is that D&I now is intentional in all businesses across every marketplace. Being in the legal field, I think we have seen it the most. And I think that we have seen it be more intentional than it has been in the past. We have our corporate clients that are requiring diversity on their matters. And not only they're requiring it, and they're not just saying we want an associate doing document review, for example. They're saying we want to know who is the originating attorney on this, who is the supervising attorney on this. And if you aren't meeting those requirements, then they're going to go elsewhere. And I think that when you look at it from a minority perspective, when you look at it from a small business perspective, I think it is a perfect opportunity for even in catering, I mean, I know Mo talked about food and beverage. I think that in my position at our firm, I'm like, who are we looking at our caterers? Are we always using the same caterer to cater the food? I mean, everybody wants something different, right? I mean, so when I say look at, we have to expand that beyond who we used to go to every time. And let's bring other people to the table, because I think it starts from the bottom and not necessarily the top, right? Like if we're bringing them in, even when we're doing our summer associates, we have to be intentional that we bring in summer associates that look like me. And the other thing I tell them is that they can't, and I'm not saying we lower the standard, but what I am saying is that you have to look at the total package for these young people, because you don't know what they have been going through to get to where they are. And that's so important to me. And we look at minority businesses, I believe it is the same mindset that we have to have. Like, you can't think that because business A has all of this together, they had someone to help them get there. And I think it is up to us to help make our minority businesses get there. I serve on the board of Central Carolina Community Foundation. And one big thing that we talk about is when you look at a big organization that's asking for money, and you look at like a small organization, a nonprofit asking for money, we can't hold them to the same standard. Or how do we help them get to the position that the other company is in? And I think that when you look at it, overall, I think South Carolina is attractive. I think we're in a unique position to be successful when we have companies like Nephron who want to expand, and they want to develop those different markets, and then they bring in leadership at a high level. Then it's up to us as leaders to train the young people amongst us so they can go out and be entrepreneurs. I mean, Nephron, like, I love the Kennedys. I love what they've done for South Carolina. But think about it, like, Bill was just an entrepreneur just trying to like sell some drugs. And now look, it's a multi-million-dollar company based in Columbia, South Carolina. So I think that it is just about us using our resources and us training and offering things like this for people to come to. I mean, I know Jermaine ain't gonna talk about, and how they get tax credits. How did they get this access to these dollars that other businesses have access to? And like, I started this with being in the legal field, like being a diversity member of leadership at a firm like Next and Pruitt really helps, because at least I get a seat at the table. I think Michelle Obama said it best. Like, when I get my seat, it's up to me to see how others can get their seat. Yeah. So I think that we're it's a prime position. George Floyd, and I'll finish with this, but I think it's important is that, like, when you look at someone like Dawn Staley, I have to bring her to this conversation, because she, last season when we were in COVID, she tried to wear a Black designer as much as she could on the sidelines. I know she caught some backlash from her employer for it, but she was like, if I'm out here and it's my job, because we were all struggling during the pandemic. She was like, let me bring some attention to these Black businesses that you don't know about. Right. So it takes people like her that are in positions of power to do that. I think all of us on this call, and even people that are listening, that's our job, because we are at a table. We have seats at the table. So we need to expand on that to have others.
Awesome. I totally agree with that. And you know what, Angela, I think that sometimes people may think, because I am not a Dawn Staley, a Mo Brown, or Jermaine Johnson, or Angela O'Neill, that what I say or do doesn't matter. But we have to all be of the mindset that we have power and influence within our own circles. So what are some of the challenges? Let's talk about some of the challenges and or needs that there are. Jermaine, you said that more and more small businesses are coming to you.
Yes.
What are they saying they need?
Funding is the number one thing that small minority-owned businesses are dealing with. And it's a problem, because even if you look back at the pandemic, when we were coming out of the pandemic and we had the PPP loans that were going on, at a report, 65% of the recipients of the PPP loan were white, compared to 8% Black, and even less, those individuals got the full amount. So of those 8% of individuals that got the PPP loan, only a small percentage of them got the full amount in which they requested. So we've got to understand that funding is the big issue. Where do they get funding? Because we also have to take into consideration, the fact that, banks just don't fund us the same way they fund other entities. So we've got to overcome that challenge, the systematic situations that we have going on here. So it's a lot that goes into it, but funding needs to be something that's critical and addressed here for small minority-owned business. There needs to be, more programming. There are programs, but there's not a lot of media that goes behind, the programming for, individuals that have small-owned businesses. So we've got to get that stuff out there. We've got to make sure that we're going into these small rural areas to talk to the individuals that are out there. But we have a lot of small rural ideas and that people want to start this business, but they don't know the first place to start because we're still dealing with broadband issues, connectivity issues. So you want to get out to those areas and you want to say, hey, listen, this is an opportunity for you to revitalize your town, for you to do some things, but it's always about the funding. I've got some different ideas on and how to do that, because we have all these dilapidated buildings that are all throughout Columbia and all throughout South Carolina where, either the county or the town or somebody owns these buildings and they're just sitting there rotting away and they're asking for money and things. Why not start a program where you allow an upstarting company to say, or upstarting, community business say, hey, listen, let me lease this from you for the first year, for $1 and you use the rest as a tax write-off. Why not do some things like that? There's other places that are doing things like these programs here. And I think we need to do a better job at investing in individuals and giving people a hand up, not a handout.
Yeah, I love that idea. How do you make that happen?
Well, personally, it's by going to these county officials and these city officials and saying, hey, listen, do you have any buildings that y'all are sitting on? Let's start this program, because it is very much in their power to do so. They can do this, just going to because they're paying taxes on it anyways. So why not go out there and use this stuff as a write-off, use this stuff as an opportunity to really invest back into these marginalized communities and help them grow and be sustainable for themselves.
Mm-hmm. Mo, I want to get you in on this conversation. Do you like that idea? Unmute yourself. That's why we asked you guys not to mute yourself, because nobody ever remembers to.
Right, exactly. My bad. No, I do think that's a great idea. And, to Representative Johnson's point, exposure, exposure is a big problem that we have within the minority community. And I look at it from two parts. If you're looking at the young adults and then our adults and what they're being exposed to and understanding the opportunities that we do have. South Carolina has an amazing technical college system here that trains folks every single day to take on not only these jobs that come in from a manufacturing standpoint, but also helping people to find, whatever path that they have from, education. So we need to lean into them as well to see how we can educate entrepreneurs and small businesses to take advantage of these opportunities that we have, that we know that's coming from minority contracting, and as well as from these corporations who are putting their own standards for minority participation in place. But what we find often is that these companies who wants to do this, who wants to have more companies coming in and actually participating, is that there's a vacuum of minority companies being there in order to fill those participation goals. And so the numbers that ended up getting shoot out ended up not representing the want to of having minorities participate, but what it ended up highlighting is that there's a lack of people and companies to fill those areas. So back to what Representative Johnson was saying, the funding is so important, but the education and exposure to the opportunities. If we're going into these high schools and saying, understanding what you're doing here today from an education is going to be able to not only get you a job, but this is what this job entails that can lead you into becoming your own boss, that will allow you to live a life that will completely transcend what you have up until this point from a community standpoint, particularly the minority community. Non-minorities have a long line of individual who can teach them business. We haven't had that as long. I'm a first-time business owner. Representative Johnson, I don't know if you're a first-time business owner as well, but you hear that a lot within our minority community. So the gap of just understanding exposure and education is so wide that we have to be intentional to fill those things. And so to Representative Johnson's point, that's exactly what we need to be doing, but going over and beyond just that. How is the state leading that effort? How is our representative going out and educating folks on what's really matter in their life instead of all these social issues that we get so down in the weeds. Do you know you can get this grant? Do you know you can get this loan? Do you know you have this ability to go get this certification that will pay you $100,000 a year if you become a welder in these areas? So those things is so important for all of us to be paying attention to and being intentional about addressing.
Yeah, I love that you say, and you listen, right before this panel, we were talking about HBCU. So you're talking about letting young people know that this is an option, teaching entrepreneurship, so to speak. They've got to get it early.
For sure, but not only just the students. I think we get so caught in the students that we don't look at the adult, attack the adults, how we're educating our adults to even educate our children. A lot of times we see our children coming back and educating our parents, and our parents are completely lost. And so where is the funding, the effort to go again to expand the exposure for the opportunities that is there, and then we can show the process of how to be successful. It's not a lacking of ability that we have here in the state. It's just a lacking of opportunity and to grow the potential that we have all over the state.
I think it's opportunity and know-how. I think a lot of times folks just don't know how to do what they want to do.
Right.
It's so much more than just having the talent and having the desire. You've got to know what those steps are. Jermaine, Mo mentioned, where is the funding? So I'll ask you, as the representative on the panel, where is the funding?
There is so
where should it be?
Yeah, well, it should be in these communities, but there's so much money that's out there for these businesses and nonprofits and organizations. I mean, literally, all you really have to do is talk to your county council members, talk to your city council members, talk to your state representatives, and talk to your senators, because they can allocate money towards certain programs, to certain events, things like that. It can go out there and can be utilized to grow your event, to grow it and to fund some of these vendors that are out there. But a lot of people don't even know that. Even state legislators get a certain stipend every month to go do certain things in their community. These types of things are just not known, and people need to understand that this stuff is here. But when you don't speak, or you don't ask, or you sit back in the back, or we have this all about me mentality, and we know how we do sometimes. It's I got it, how I got it, and I'm going to get it, how I'm going to get it. It's that type of situation that really, it's not only you that's suffering, but it's your community that's suffering. Because if you only spoke, if you have the will and you want to do something, but you're letting your pride keep you down there at the bottom, it's not just you that's suffering, it's everybody else that's suffering that's attached to your dream or whatever it is you're trying to get done. So we have to make sure that we go out there and we speak to these individuals, because the people that are in power, they know how to get the money to you. They know where to go. They know who to ask. And if they don't know, they have legislative aides that can get the information for you and send it right back to you. So, you've got to go ahead and talk to these individuals, reach out to them and say, hey, listen, you work for me. Help me get this done for our community.
I love that. So the funding is a big issue. Knowing, not only having the funding, but knowing where to get the funding. And you say people need to be more conscientious about where they can get funding from and who to approach.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just here in Richland County, each county council member has money to allocate towards programs and things like that. There's hospitality grants that are there. There are state grants. There's parks and recreation grants and things. So there's lots of opportunities for people who want to do certain things to bring, tourism and hospitality right here to Richland County where we're at, but individuals aren't asking, or they're not talking about this type of stuff, and we've got to do a better job as city officials, as state officials, as legislators, to come out to the community to say, hey, listen, this is available to you, not just, helping the people that we know or personally have a relationship with, but, educating our communities as a whole to make sure everybody can take advantage of these opportunities.
I love, Jermaine, that you are saying not only is it the responsibility of the small business, the minority business, but it's also the responsibility of those decision makers, those who allocate the money to make themselves known. Angela, what do you think in this whole process are not only challenges, but also things that people need to overcome?
Well, I think piggybacking off of these gentlemen right here, there's two things. There's opportunity, there's resource, and there's education, right? So those three things, if you don't have those three things, then nothing's going to change, right? And so when it comes to education, it's like Representative Johnson said, it's not just the young students, it's the entire family, because we're talking generational things. We're talking things that, I mean, I'm a first generation college student, first generation professional degree. And so I'm the first person in my family, not that they haven't been successful, but to understand what education is like, to understand when you go to these schools, PWIs or HBCU or anything, there's such a camaraderie created that puts you in a different level already. Yeah. And so when you get there, it's how do you use it? I saw my counterparts. I mean, I thought I was a pretty savvy individual, but when I went to the University of Virginia, I saw how they operated, and I made it my life's mission to operate like them. Like I would see them go into a room and they would be like, I'm trying to talk to everybody. I'm watching them and they're telling me, no, that none of these people matter. You can tell who the most important person is in the room. And that's who you want to go talk to, because that's the decision maker. They taught me so much about these things, but I didn't have anyone to teach me. Right. So when we talk about it, it's like Mo and Rep Johnson says that we have to educate the whole family. Like it's a holistic approach. When we go into these schools, like Mo referenced the technical colleges, that is our biggest asset, because you can go there for free now. Like you can go for free, learn you a trade that pays more than most law students graduate making. And there's no shame in that. And we have all these manufacturers around here that they will pay you to go to school. Then they're going to teach you how to do the job. So then when they're doing that, what they have to be learning and what we have to do a better job of, and I say we, a collective, we like city officials, legislatures, like civic groups, we have to let them know, okay, you're in there now. So now we're going to teach you about financial literacy. Now we're going to teach you how to develop a business plan. Now, because when Rep Johnson talked about the PPP money, the reason they didn't get it is they didn't even know how to fill out the application. They made the application so hard that only a few got through, and then it's sort of like the haves and the have-nots, right? So the money was supposed to really help the have-nots, right? But it ended up having the haves, right? And then they didn't understand the payback requirements. They didn't understand like what they had to do. They didn't understand what they did, and yes, there's been some sad stories on both sides about how people misuse the money, right? But like we didn't even get a chance to get into it because we didn't know how, and we don't have enough loan officers in these banks to help them. Like we don't like when I think back about it, I mean, when you look back on it, like we should have had a group ready to help these small businesses fill out PPP loans. Like none of us were thinking about that, right? But that's how we could have helped. And then some people, there are a lot of businesses that were lost because they didn't have the funds to continue, and then you have these big businesses getting PPP loans. Did they need them? I'm not saying they didn't need them. I mean, we were all in the same place, but they had reserves that they didn't need to tackle into the PPP money. The businesses that we're talking about didn't have reserves. So I think the biggest obstacle is education. But then the other thing is, like Rep Johnson was saying, is that, we're in a position where we take care of who we know in our circle, right? We have to expand it beyond that, because that is what our counterparts do. They take care of all their friends. Like they call them and saying, hey, man, my business is about to go under. What can you do? Like, how can you help me? And they put them in positions to go talk to this loan officer right here. I'm gonna give him a call. See, we need to have people in those positions that we can make those calls to, but we have to do a better job of educating them and I'll say this from my perspective. I think as Black people, as African Americans, we're a very proudful race, right? So we don't like to let people know we need help, even within our community. So when we talk about being in the community, like we have to find a way to get beyond that so that we can help you. Because, I laugh because a lot of times we don't wait to ask for help until it's the last straw, right? there are so many things that led up to that. So when you're a minority owned business, I believe it's the same process. Like they can't make rent this month, right? Then they need to come and say, look, I can't make rent this month at my building, right? They're gonna get, they're gonna give you a couple of days. They're gonna give you, maybe not the first month, but the second month. But then you 6 months behind, and you wonder why they're about to kick you out the building. And then you're gonna come and say, look, can we get some rental help? Like, but if you would have came to us in the beginning, we could have helped you. I mean, like in theory, and I believe that is how we are. We look at it as a stigma, but it's not a stigma, because believe me, the other people have the same issues. The other small businesses have the same issues that you're going through. They're just willing to say, hey, look, I need the help, right? Yeah. So I think that if we do a better job, people in positions in leadership, whatever. I mean, you don't have to be on the TV to be a leader. You mentioned it. You said like Dawn is a different type of leader, right? She just has the exposure, but we can all be leaders, right? It's like we have an obligation.
Yeah, we do.
For our ancestors to be those leaders. It's like I hate to bring Supreme Court in this, but when Cory Booker gave his speech last week, like he speaking to Ketanji, like I'm like him, like it made me more inspired to go out and do more, because I'm like, she is standing on the feet of all of our ancestors. So we're in, even little old me in Columbia, South Carolina, I need to do more. I need to figure out what small business, or how can we connect them with different people? Because we all have connections. Everyone on here has connections. So how do we use them to help our brethren get what they need so they can survive?
Yeah. Angela, listen, if it was 1979, I'd say right on, girl. Because you are right. You are right. First of all, it is our responsibility, because somebody did it for us. I mean, listen, we all know the history. We can go through this, who suffered, bled, and died for us to be in this position. But I mean, you said another thing that's really huge here. You're talking about shifting a mindset, shifting how we were raised. Don't put your business in the street. Do not. What happens at the house stays at the house. We all grew up, Black folk grew up with the Vegas rule. What happens in Vegas in the house stays.
All of us. All of us.
Yeah. And that's such a big thing to have to shift. Our conversation to say it's okay to say you need help, because there's somebody out there that can help you. There are resources there. The other thing is, though, once, as each of you said, you recognize what the issue is, and then you see, okay, there are resources. We need to, and you tell me this, the three of you, how do we then train our people? And somebody mentioned this, to then, I think it was you, Angela, to learn how to fill out these grant applications, these contracts, because there is a lot of money out there. Just a couple of weeks ago, the attorney Byron Gibson with the Fifth Circuit Solicitor's Office, Jermaine, you were at one of those meetings and identified that there were so many resources that are needed for a lot of these small nonprofits, businesses that are doing the groundwork. They're doing the grassroots work, great work. Don't have funding, don't know how to get funding. And quite frankly, even though there's funding available, who and how can they learn, or who can they get to then either do the application or teach them how to do the application? And here's the thing, everybody doesn't need to be taught. That's just not everybody's skill set. So anybody that wants to jump in here, maybe you, Jermaine, can jump in here.
Yeah, so and that's a good segue, because one of the things that I've been trying to get, we know we have in this state, we've got a big issue with gun violence and things like that that is going on. So I actually asked, to put a proviso in the budget. Hopefully it stays in there, but a proviso for $25 million that would go to DHEC to create a grant program for grassroots organizations throughout the communities across the state of South Carolina that are doing this type of work. So those are also different types of small businesses. These are small businesses that are in these communities that are working together to stop gun violence or stop violence in these communities. And it's just, and what we will have to do, and it's probably something that I'll take on along with somebody else to help educate individuals, these grassroots organizations that are across the state that are doing this, on how to apply for this funding. We really just need somebody in these communities to take on that task, to say, hey, listen, I know this information. Let's do a community meeting. Let me just show you this. You know, it's one thing you could just have a screen up, you know, somebody with a hotspot or some Wi-Fi say, hey, listen, let me show you each site here. Let me show you each page. You can just walk you through step by step. And these types of things can spread, you know, once individuals know. I show people all day, every day how to get an LLC. You get an LLC online in 5 minutes. And a lot of people don't realize that people are, you know, paying, you know, thousands of dollars to get somebody to set this stuff up. And I'm telling you, hey, listen, if you want an LLC, you want to be legal, I'll show you how to get a business, you know, together in 5 minutes. You know, these types of things, we have to share this information. We've got to pay it forward. You know, one of the individuals that, you know, we were just talking about not asking people for help. I went to a white friend of mine and I said, hey, man, I want to learn everything about commercial real estate. He said, all right, well, let me take you to lunch and I'll pay for lunch and I will tell you everything you need to know about commercial real estate. And this is before I was even a legislator. So I was just a regular civilian. So it was nothing that he had to gain from, but he was giving me this information because I asked for the information. And that's what we have to do. We have to ask for this information and be willing to give up the information if we know the information.
Yeah. Representative Jermaine Johnson, Representative Jermaine Johnson, entrepreneur Mo Brown, and Angela O'Neill are on the small minority business roundtable at the South Carolina Legislative Black Caucus. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Trey Taylor. Please continue to post and share this important information out to someone that you think may need to hear it. I want to say hi to everyone who's joined us. Danielle Lake said, right on. I think that was to you, Angela. Thank you, Danielle, for watching. We appreciate you. Mo, you wanted to jump in on the conversation?
Yeah, I want to hop in. You know, what we can do specifically, you know, if you're looking at any issue, you need to understand the full scope of what you are tasked with trying to solve. And the one thing that we haven't done yet that I think that the state could commission is a statewide disparity study, and really look at the gaps in the procurement efforts that we have throughout the state. Because if you don't do this disparity study, you really don't know what those gaps are. Say for instance, the minority community here that has business typically are under $1 million in revenue. But if you have a procurement program that is targeting companies that have more than $1 million in revenue in their receipts in order to be able to take on these policies, then you're say 80% of them is under the $1 million, you're going to lose out on 80% of those companies being able to grow out. And so if we don't know where those gaps are at specifically, we cannot design these programs to be effective. We end up having what I would say somewhat lip service, or just checking the box of having information out there that's not being utilized as it should. But once you have this disparity studies, you know specifically where those gaps are, and then how you can fill those gaps, fill those gaps. So that's one thing I think we need to look at doing over the next course of 1 or 2 years from the state and local standpoint, to make sure that the contracts, the state paid dollars that we're putting out there to fill these contracts, are matching the minority opportunities that should be associated with it. And so now we know what we can target. The second thing I would also say is, again, we must prioritize homegrown businesses and incentivize those cultures and making sure that they are funded. You know, South Carolina, we do have funding that's out there for small business to get there, but we don't have a state-backed loan program, whereas Georgia, Florida, Maryland, Virginia, they have that too. And so again, we're talking about state-paid dollars coming back in to support minorities who put that money back into it. Put that money back into the state in order for us to be able to, you know, grow these type of companies. So I think those two things will help us tremendously, doing the disparity study, and then two, from a state legislative standpoint, all the way down to the local level, how are we prioritizing the creation of homegrown small businesses?
I want to come back to that state-backed loan program comment in a minute. I also want to mention that Pranita Mack, thank you so much for joining us, Pranita. She says, please don't forget that there are CDFIs in South Carolina that are resources for small and minority businesses. Pranita, if you can put in the chat how people can access those CDFIs, and even just a little short narrative as to what CDFIs are for those folks who are watching that want more information. Angela, I want to bring you back in the conversation. What can you share what you think, and we talked a little bit about this earlier, contracts, programs, events, activities. What do minority business owners need to participate in to be successful?
I would, at a high level, I think you have to participate in anything and everything. Like at this juncture, when you're trying to get into it, like I don't think you can be selective, because when we start being selective, then we limit ourselves. I think that anytime there's an opportunity to get out there to talk about your business, and you have to do it. Like you have to join the chamber, like you have to join those ADI groups, like just business groups. Like anytime you get an opportunity to interface with someone that isn't in your circle, then that's what you need to do. It's tiring. It is tiring, but you have to hustle. I mean, we all have hustle in us, right? You have to hustle to get to where you need to be. And that's what I see my counterparts doing. They attend everything. And then, like, oh, I'm tired, I don't want to do it. But then you cannot attend and then get upset because something became of that meeting.
Right.
You never know where you're going to be, who you're going to meet, right? And sometimes it's like the chance meetings that make a difference in everyone's life. And I think that everyone here probably has a chance meeting that made a difference in your life. And I know it's almost time for us to end, but I want everyone that's listening, because this is something that has become important to me over the last 18 months, is that, we have to do a better job of helping others. Right. And I also think that one thing I added earlier is that, not only do we grow up the Vegas style that what happens in our house stays in our house, we also grew up with you can't trust everybody, right? Because as soon as you tell everyone your hopes and your dreams, they take it and run with it, or they may use it against it. So I want us all to consider having a more receptive heart. Like when people come to you with information, you literally help them. Don't steal their ideas. Don't take it and make it your own. Let's help them, because there's enough for all of us. But I think that we hold back. Like it's the same thing like being prideful. But I think we do it for a lot of reasons. So I think it's people like us and other leaders, whoever they may be, they have a receptive heart and listen to what they have to say and genuinely help them succeed, because there is room for everyone at the table.
Yeah, thank you, Angela. Jermaine, I want to ask you a couple of questions. One, the state-backed loan program that Mo mentioned. Do you like that idea, and how feasible would that be to get?
I love the idea. How feasible it would be. This is South Carolina still. And South Carolina is they're big business, and the Republicans kind of control everything. So, with something like that, just, a state-backed loan program would be, if I want to apply for a loan, a lender could give me some money at a low interest rate because, if I defaulted on my payments, then the state would come in and pick up and help out a little bit. So, in that type of situation, it's great. I love it. I would love to see it here. I probably will take a look at the Georgia legislation to see, how if we can mirror something like that, because we know what Georgia is very similar to South Carolina. But the thing is, when these Republicans here, they like big business. And, we saw how they came in and gave a bunch of tax cuts for, the Carolina Panthers, and they're doing all these different things for, these organizations, these companies. We need our government here to start treating small businesses like they treat the big businesses. Give us those same tax cuts, give us those incentives, give us those opportunities like you're giving these big organizations. So I agree 100% with what Mo was talking about in the state-backed loan program. And I think that's something that we definitely need to consider and we need to look at here in South Carolina.
Yeah. Go ahead, Mo.
Yeah, if I could just add about the question and events, as good resources for everyone, every county has a chamber of commerce that will be able to provide you information. So whatever your county is, use a Google device and put in Chamber of Commerce for whatever your county, and you're going to have a lot of information from there. Also, economic development offices in every county. They will be able to provide information about job opportunities and education opportunities as well for yourself to go there. So whatever your county is, go to either Economic Development Office or the Chamber of Commerce, and they will have that information there for you to be able to utilize for your own personal growth in small business or individual with education as well. So each and everyone who's interested, use those resources as well.
Yeah. Before we go, I do want to ask you one more question, Jermaine, and then I want everyone to give their final thoughts. But Jermaine, you had mentioned earlier about the challenge for every employee to get employees. Can we talk about any creative ways that any of you can suggest? Because it's tight. You know, everybody is looking for a job, and there are people who need jobs, but there seems to be some kind of disconnect. Can everyone just briefly chime in on maybe some creative ways for some of these small businesses to get these positions filled?
Yeah. So what I've been doing is I've been hosting a lot of job fairs in my community. I've got one coming up next month where I just, I do all the marketing, do all the different things, and I just try to get individual opportunities that are in my communities. I think there's a disconnect, when it comes to rural areas where they're just not getting the information. A lot of people are still relying on the church or a flyer in the post office or something like that to get this information. So we have a disconnect there. I also think that majority of these companies and even the fast food restaurants have now gone to internet. Everything's on their website now, so you can't even go there and say, "Hey, listen, I'd like to fill out an application." There are a lot of things. All right, well, go check this website. Go here, go there. And it's a situation that we have going on. I ran into that challenge when I sponsored one of my job fairs down here, and I drove around the community looking for any businesses that had paper applications, and it was tough. It was tough, to find companies that had paper applications for individuals. So we have that problem there. So some of the things that we can do is create more apprenticeship programs with high schools and colleges for these individuals who are trying to find their way. A lot of our young people don't even know what they want to do or who they want to be. We can help guide them by giving them apprenticeship opportunities to say, hey, listen, come in here and learn about this job here, learn about this trade, learn about this here, work under the tutelage of somebody and learn these different skill sets. See if this is something you're interested in. We can do things like that. We can go, create more of those with the HBCUs that we have in the area. Go around and let's create more partnerships. I don't think we have enough partnerships that are going on with these big companies, big organizations. They go to Clemson, they go to USC, they go to these big schools, but they're not coming to our local schools, our local HBCUs to say, hey, look, we have these opportunities that are available for you, and we want you to come work for us.
Yeah. Angela, we're wrapping up the conversation. Okay. Final thoughts, please.
I think I will echo what Rep. Johnson said. I think that we have to educate. Definitely it starts with education. When you talk about the creativity, I think, and this is going to go somewhere really quickly, but I think that COVID changed the mindset of a lot of people because we went remote like overnight.
Yeah.
Right. So now the challenge is, how do we get them to come back to work when they went remote? And they were like, oh, you want me to come back to the office? I've been working for 9 months without coming to the office. And so we have all these jobs available, but they're like manufacturing jobs. They're like, jobs that you can't work remote. So then they have to figure out, and they don't want to work 12 hours. I mean, but, manufacturing, how our parents viewed it, is totally different than the manufacturing of today. So I think that we have to figure out a happy median to deal with these Generation Xers, Ys. I don't even know what year it is but we have to figure out a way to kind of meet them where they are, but still like have a successful business, because they're looking at it like, oh, you want me to come in the office for 12 hours? No, I'm not doing that. But COVID showed us that we didn't need to be in the office. So how do you transition them back slowly to working in an environment that involves people? And the other thing I'll say, and we all know this on this call, we've got to do a better job of broadband in our state. We've got to figure out a way to get these rural communities access. And I mean, transportation is still an issue in our state. I mean, we could be up here all day, but I think the main thing is, once we can tackle broadband, so people don't have to go up to the McDonald's to use their signal, we will see some changes about to happen.
Yeah. Thank you, Angela. Mo, final thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's pretty much echo and everyone else's thoughts, but we got to look at the new social contract that we have within the state and within this country. And that's on all levels, looking from where we're doing from social justice to job opportunities until to how we are legislating. Representative Johnson just stated that the Republicans in this state focuses on big business, which we see that often. But at the same time, they focus on value and value getting created. And so how are we bridging those gaps to have those communications with the counterparts on the Republican side so that we all understand that our task as leaders, no matter what position that you are in, is to move us forward. We get so bogged down in these, competition between R&D, white and black, whatever religion you are, that we forget that these are human issues, right? And if we can have an understanding that we need people working, we need people having an opportunity to expand themselves as they move forward in whatever position that they are, then we're going to have an opportunity to be successful. And the last thing I would say, the apprenticeship programs is really, really great. And South Carolina has a really good program, Apprenticeship Carolina, that links high school students with these employers that can be expanded out, that folks can go in and take advantage of too. But here's an ideal to be able to expand that out to adults. How we're bringing these adults to fill these jobs, and particularly on the manufacturing side, that we know that we have a 7 million gap of folks right now to being able to fill these positions. We also know on a global scale that reshoring of jobs are going to come here. And so the expansion of energy and manufacturing, even our contract workers who can have the flexibility to go out and fill multiple jobs is happening. And so how we're preparing for that right now. And so a part of all that is that social contract that we must address and be very intentional about the issues that we have coming in front of us.
Yeah, thanks, Mo. Jermaine, for your final comments, I want you to tell us, what do you believe small minority businesses need from policymakers on the local, state, and federal level?
Yes, thank you. I really believe that they need more investment from us here at the state level. I think we need to get more intentionally involved in our communities to really assist on some of these things. And sometimes they say they say they don't want you to legislate everything. They don't want you to put laws in here for everything. They don't want you to force you to do everything. But some of these things just have to happen. I mean, just with voting and all that, we have to have some things to make sure that we don't repeat the crimes and things of yesteryear. So I think we need to put some policies in place that can assist these small minority businesses with funding sources or strategies or things like that to make sure that these individuals are getting their rightful share. I think when we lift everybody up, we all win. And so we need to make sure that everybody is winning. And I also want to touch in on the fact that when we talked about when Angela just mentioned about the remote stuff, we have to really listen to what she just said about the remote stuff. People went home on remote, understanding that this was an opportunity for big businesses and companies and corporations to really figure out how to automate your job away. Mm-hmm. And we've got to understand, if you don't believe me, just go into your Walmart, go into your Bi-Lo, go into your CVS, go into your Lowe's, go into your stores and see what is happening in these communities. Your jobs are being automated away with these self-checkouts, corporations. We have Amazon that's all over the place. You order something right now, you'll have it tonight. We've got to understand what is going on in our community, and we've got to do a better job of investing right here, right at home, with companies and corporations and small businesses that are right and just here to invest in these communities. So I think policymakers like myself, we should do a better job at getting the word out. We need to put some money behind advertisement for these communities, whether however these communities want to receive this information. We've got to do that, whatever it's mailers or flyers or whatever we need to do. But we've got to do a better job. We've got to be a better voice and a louder voice for our communities.
Thank you, Jermaine Johnson, Mo Brown, Angela O'Neill. We appreciate your heart, your dedication, your comments, and your thoughts today during this small minority business roundtable from the South Carolina.
Be the example.
Yeah,
you are the example. Be the example.
Thank you. Thank you, Mo. Thank all three of you. We really appreciate what you shared with us today. You are watching the South Carolina Legislative Black Caucus Minority Business Forecast. Please continue to post and share this conversation out so that more people can be involved and engaged. These are important conversations that people need to hear about. I want to remind everybody that the South Carolina Legislative Black Caucus is a nonpartisan issued focus group. Coming up, understanding income tax credit. That's next during the South Carolina Legislative Black Caucus Minority Business Forecast. I'm Trey Taylor. We'll be right back.
Hello, I'm Dr. Ivory Thigpen, State Representative and incoming Chair of the South Carolina Legislative Black Caucus. I want to thank each and every participant and panelist for joining us today for this, the second annual Minority Business Forecast. As previously stated by our chair, Black and minority businesses are vital to our caucus and to our country. I believe that we must do more than simply assist them. We must encourage as well as equip our minority communities with this vital information which is imperative for building stronger communities. I look forward to the remainder of this virtual event, and again, I want to thank you for participating in this, our second annual Minority Business Forecast.
Welcome back to the South Carolina Legislative Black Caucus Minority Business Forecast, bringing together South Carolina lawmakers and the state's most prominent professionals and minority business leaders covering topics and issues vital to competitiveness and overall success. Please tag, post, and share this informative conversation filled with important information, valuable advice, and key resources. And now, understanding the H.4 880 income tax cut and how it could impact minority communities. With Representative Chandra Dillard, South Carolina House 23, which covers Greenville County. Representative Dillard currently serves on the Ways and Means Committee in the South Carolina House of Representatives. Also, Will Frierson, Director of Government Affairs at the South Carolina Chamber of Commerce. Prior to his position at the Chamber, Will was the Government Relations Assistant and Manager at the National Cotton Council of America in Washington, D.C. Please welcome our panelists.
Hello again, 2022 MBF participants.
Good afternoon, and thank you again so much for joining us for the South Carolina Legislative Black Caucus Minority Business Forecast, as you heard. Now the panel is about understanding the income tax cut, the H.4 880, and how tax cuts could impact minority communities. Again, Will Frierson, Representative Dillard, thank you both so much for joining us today. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Yes. Let me ask a question. Please explain, first of all, what the tax cut is, who qualifies, and how it's implemented.
Okay. Well, I guess I can jump in here. And it's appropriate to have this conversation because we're in the middle of tax season. Mm-hmm. And I don't know anybody who likes to file taxes, but it is a part of our life going forward. But for once in a long time, I have some great news about a bill that we passed in the South Carolina House this session, which you referenced is H 4880. And so the good news is that this tax bill proposal actually reduces taxes on almost everyone. Yes, you heard me right. Reduces taxes on just about everyone. But the better news, it absolutely does not raise taxes on anyone. And so how are we proposing to do this? We're proposing to do this by simplifying the current state tax filing system that we have, trying to make it easier for everyone who's up and down the spectrum of the tax rate. And so we're going to collapse what we have now. We have several buckets. You can go from 3% all the way to 7%. We're going to collapse those different levels into 2 levels. And basically what we are proposing is to bring the top tax rate down to 6% over a course of 5 years. And then everything in the middle, so everybody will, you'll be 6%. And that those who are at the lower end of the tax scale will remain at 3%. And so what does that really mean? So, you got your money. So income that is less than $3,200, there'll be no tax on that income. So you have income of $3,200, no tax on that income. If you're between $1,640 and above, that will be taxed at 6.5%. So this year we're proposing to take the 7 down to 6.5%. And ultimately 6% when the bill will be finally phased in. So the 1% reduction that we're proposing right now, we want to see this if it comes to fruition, because again, this is a bill, this is a proposal, passed the House, it's over in the Senate, but we're going to say if it passes, what you could actually realize is in 2022, an actual reduction in your taxes of $281, and by full implementation, around $400. And so people don't realize this, but we've been looking a lot at Georgia and North Carolina at what we call the effective tax rate. Yes, you can get taxed at 7% now and 4% and 3%. But the effective tax rate, what really happens is like 3%, 3.1% in South Carolina. And so with this new bill, it would actually come down to 2.54%. And again, this is the House's version of giving tax relief to everyone. And that's what's so beautiful about this bill. It actually leaves no one out. And that is why I believe we were able to have a consensus on this bill, bipartisan support. Doesn't happen all the time in the House, but it happened because everyone could get something and get in. And we're really pleased about that. And I want to also say that, no, this does not do anything about your county taxes, your property taxes, your city taxes. This is what your state income taxes, what we do here at the state, and how those taxes affect your pocketbook.
Right. Thank you, Representative Dillard, for breaking it down for us. You mentioned this briefly, and Will, I'm going to get you in just a minute. You mentioned this briefly, and I want to delve into a little bit more about the fact that this issue was heavily supported by both political parties. Why do you think that is?
Well, Trey, for a long time, when we look at policy in South Carolina, usually we're pitting the haves and the have-nots against each other. And more than likely, the haves normally win due to, just the structure of our legislature. And I listened to the conversation before this one about connections and who's in the circle. Yeah. So, usually, it's not always the playing field is not always level, right. But we could all get behind this because everybody that we know could benefit from this, and especially those in the middle sometimes who are left out as well.
Yeah. Well, from the chamber's standpoint, will this bill impact you guys any? And if so, please explain how.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you, Trey. And thank you, Representative Dillard, for really breaking down the bill and what it does. It really does. So for a number of years, tax reform and tax simplification has been our top priority here at the South Carolina Chamber of Commerce. We view it as a competitiveness angle. That Representative Dillard hinted to our marginal rate, which is currently 7%. It's the highest in the Southeast. And ranks us as one of the bottom states on that end nationwide. And so, again, Representative Dillard broke down, effectively there are different numbers that you actually pay based on the amount of deductions you're able to take, whether you file jointly or you have children. But our current system really penalizes those single filers, and especially those who recent college graduates in their 20s and 30s who are, graduated from an institution in South Carolina and are looking to stay here, or they've graduated another place around the country and looking to move here. It really impacts them. And then so when most people look online to see what your marginal tax rate is, when you're weighing a decision as a business to either relocate your facilities or your headquarters, or if you're a student seeking different opportunities, you see that top marginal rate and you get sticker shock, especially when you look to our peer states, North Carolina, which is lower, Georgia, which is lower, Florida, which has no income tax, Tennessee that has, it really turns folks off from a workforce perspective. So we've heard from our member companies over the years that we really need to address our marginal income tax rate, make it easier, and that will help us recruit those people who wish to stay in state, but also those who want to move to South Carolina. So we think it's a great opportunity. And one thing worth noting too is that the bill does deduct all military retirement income from your South Carolina taxable income. So it's a way, South Carolina is a very proud military state. We have a great base of veterans who, when they finish deployment and active duty, we want them to stay in South Carolina and utilize those extra funds to, start new businesses in their communities, or continue their career. So we're very happy about this bill and appreciate the General Assembly taking these steps this session.
I want to stick with you, Will, because you mentioned that just the same thing I was getting ready to ask. Will this affect businesses opening and businesses coming in? And you said yes. So is that a conversation that you have with small businesses coming into the chamber and as far as recruitment of other businesses?
Yeah, no, absolutely. We certainly will, illustrate to folks who are prospective employers wishing to move to South Carolina and tell them that, hey, this makes our state more competitive nationwide. And, one thing that I think needs to be noted about this bill and having that top marginal rate and really penalizing those young single filers is that, I'm originally from Orangeburg. And so I think of a place where we have 2 4-year institutions in Claflin and South Carolina State University, and then Orangeburg Calhoun Technical College. But we can't keep our talent that we produce at these universities in a place like Orangeburg because, again, we don't have many. We have manufacturing operations, but not a large enough. But the problem is we don't attract enough professional service employers as a state at large. And again, there's a bunch of different factors that go into that. But one of those main points is that their main workforce are those who just graduated college or just completed a master's degree, who are the most penalized by our current system. So simplifying that and reducing that burden on those individuals should 100% allow South Carolina to attract more professional services, knowledge-based jobs as we continue to kind of diversify our workforce and look towards the future. So we're not overly reliant on manufacturing, which has been a great industry for South Carolina. But, just as we have to evolve, we think this is one way to do that.
Right. You're watching the South Carolina Legislative Black Caucus Minority Business Forecast, second annual in the Minority Business Forecast. This is the third panel on understanding H4880, the income tax cut, and how the tax cut could impact minority communities. Representative Dillard, I want to come back to you. And you talked a lot about how this was supported. This did have bipartisan support. Do you believe there are other issues that can garner such bipartisan support?
Well, certainly I do. And I have served in the House long enough now. I have seen, there have been other examples. I don't want to indicate that this is the only one that we have had, but of late, it kind of sticks out because we have been talking about income tax reduction for a long time. Both parties, maybe perhaps we have been speaking a different language, but we were able to come together this year and really do something to impact all South Carolina citizens and a business community included. And so that's why this is such a momentous occasion to celebrate around. And, you know, we can't celebrate fully just yet. Again, this is a bill like any other bill. It is currently in the Senate, and the Senate has their ideas about tax reform. And so we're going to find out, you know, if our bill will, how it will be considered in the Senate. And we don't know if it will be changed, if they'll like what we're doing. So I want to be careful to, you know, to say this is not a done deal.
Right.
We're in the process, but I'm just trying to explain to our audience what could be possible and what our vision is on the House side with this bill.
When will we know something? What's the timeline?
Well, April 7th is what we call cutoff day for the deadline of legislation to make it fully through the process. And so we are watching the Senate's calendar. You know, we have no control of what they take up and when they take it up. So, you know, we'll be looking to see if they will consider this bill before April 7th. And we know that they have a lot to do over there. They have the budget to be considered. And we did this too, looking at the current budget that we just completed 2 weeks ago. So as far as a timeline, I can't say because now it's out of our hands and it's in the Senate's hands. But April 7th is a very important date. It's called the crossover date. And that's our date that we have a deadline to make sure a bill can make it through the whole process.
Well, I want to come back to you in just a minute and ask you about the budget and your thoughts about it. But first, I want to ask you, Will, how do you believe this will impact Black and minority communities and businesses?
Sure. No, I think, you know, one thing that's really worth noting is that, as Representative Dillard said, you know, first year you'll get about $200 back. You know, if you look at kind of the average, and then by once full implementation, around $400 annually. That's money that, you know, citizens can use to reinvest in their local communities, whether that's shopping at small businesses, you know, using extra funds to pocket change to come with new ideas and really put back into their community. And I think that's one thing that the General Assembly has certainly argued and recognized, that allowing taxpayers to have some extra funds when we have a huge surplus. I think, you know, one of the reasons that we were able to also get so much support on this too is that South Carolina is flush with a lot of extra capital this year, and that's for a number of reasons. Extra collections are up, but also you know, work that the federal government has done replenishing our funds and through COVID relief money. So we had an opportunity to really kind of reward and pay back the taxpayers. So anytime that taxpayers can utilize extra funds and again, re-stimulate their local economy, I think is a great thing. And I think that's something that this bill will allow folks to do as they save money on their taxes.
Representative Dillard, what about you? What do you believe the significance of the tax cut is for Black and minority communities and businesses in South Carolina?
Well, I think Will is absolutely correct. And, you know, people just need a break. You know, right now we are in an inflationary mode. You know, we've been hit with COVID. We've been going through that for 2 years. And so families have seen loss. And we know that many of our essential workers, which are folks in the minority community, have been hit really hard. But now we find ourselves in this phase of the pandemic, but also in an inflationary economy. Mm-hmm. And so anytime that we can give South Carolina citizens particularly our brown and black communities, more income in their pocketbooks, it's a good thing. It's a good thing.
Yeah. I do want to ask you, I mentioned this, your thoughts on the budget that just passed the House. Can you give us what you think and some important highlights?
Well, again, we had a record-setting budget year, and I think that was because, and when I say record-setting, the time in which we had the budget on the floor, we completed the budget in 2 days, which has only occurred. This is only the second time it has occurred in the time that I've been in the House, and but I think it's because we were very flush with cash. There were a lot of listening sessions in advance of going into the budget through the committee process, giving different stakeholders in the process time to come and talk with the various committees, looking at transformational expenditures with the COVID relief funds that will help all of our communities. And so there was very little dissension. Again, you can't please everybody, but I think that overwhelmingly there was consensus on the budget.
Right. And what is the process for the budget moving forward? Can you explain that a little bit?
Yes. So the budget is very much like the bill that we are talking about. It has gone to the Senate. The Senate Finance Committee has been meeting, going through the same process of listening to stakeholders, which includes our state agencies, but other people in the process. And so they will craft their budget, and they're going to look at our budget, but they will craft their budget, and they're going to agree with some things we've done, and they're going to maybe not agree, and that can be. They could put more money on lines or less money than what we have allocated.
Right.
But then their budget comes back to the House. And then usually there is a conference committee, 3 senators, 3 House members who can talk about the differences in the budget and come up with that final budget document. And from there, both bodies will pass the budget and it goes to the governor's desk. So we're in that phase where they haven't taken up the budget yet on the Senate side. And so we do have a ways to go.
You're watching the South Carolina Legislative Black Caucus Minority Business Forecast. I'm Trey Taylor. This is the panel on understanding the 4880 income tax cut and how the tax cut could impact minority communities. Will Friesen with the Chamber of Commerce joins us, along with Representative Chandra Dillard. Please post and share this information out. Tag someone that you know will need to hear this important conversation. And we thank you so much for watching. I want to ask both of you how you think, if at all, some of the national headlines have impacted South Carolina businesses, small and minority businesses. I mean, tax, the war in Ukraine, gas prices, inflation. What do you think? Will, you first. Is that impacting South Carolina businesses and then specifically small and minority businesses? And if so, how?
Sure. Yeah. I'll say, start tackling with, the war in Ukraine. I think one of the things that we've heard recently from our different companies here in South Carolina, and those who are, headquartered throughout the country, maybe have a little different focus, but the ones that are headquartered here, they're looking for resources to prepare against potential cyber attacks. And we've been fortunate to talk with the Biden administration, but also our Emergency Preparedness Center here in South Carolina to collect resources to share with those companies on, how to tell whether your system's been compromised or you have potential risk to be compromised. Just trying to facilitate that information for folks to be prepared, because you never know. And that's, certainly as we hear those threats starting to get more credible, that's something that we keep our eyes on. But with regards to gas prices, I'm specifically think of, my background with agriculture, and fuel prices are skyrocketing. And that's not just for agriculture, that's for all small businesses that, utilize transportation. As you have to account for these new production costs and input costs, it's always tough to raise prices because the consumer feels that. But sometimes as a small business, you have to do that in order to remain competitive. I think, again, highlighting on agriculture, and our state's lucky that agriculture is our number one, our agribusiness is our number one industry.
Mhm.
As your production costs go higher, people generally see that the cost of your good is going higher, but it never tracks with that production cost. And that's on the same for all the supply chain and inputs. Usually those input costs scale at a quicker rate than what you can charge for your good. And usually it's the business owner that feels that crunch. And you have to deal with the conversation of, I can't believe you're raising prices. But a lot of times folks have to raise prices in order to stay in business and remain competitive. And again, as we've seen through COVID, we've lost a number of businesses who weren't able to make it through the pandemic. So anything that forces folks to reevaluate whether they have viability is something that's concerning to our state.
Do you see it particularly affecting smaller minority businesses from the chamber standpoint as opposed to others?
I don't know if there's a specific way to quantify that, but again, I think the smaller businesses are the ones who feel that inflation hit more than larger companies. I mean, they're the ones at the end of the day that they don't have the balance sheets that can withstand those hits that these larger companies can. So that is what would really concern me and would concern the chamber for our smaller employers or minority-owned businesses that may not have the capital to withstand these inflationary pieces. So, as we think of ways to offset those challenges, both at a state and federal level, that's something that we want to be involved in to ensure they have the resources they need.
Yeah, and I was going to ask, what kind of resources are there from the chamber for our smaller minority businesses that may be experiencing some challenges, particularly in light of, what's going on in our world today? I mean, listen, the pandemic aside, which we're still in, COVID-19, 2021, and now 22. But again, all of the things that we just mentioned, the war, the inflation, the gas prices. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah, no, absolutely. One of our big things that we like to preach is that we're an advocacy organization. For our members and for those prospective members, we want to hear what's affecting your business and how we can help you in South Carolina improve those conditions, whether that's, again, through, stuff like tax simplification, finding ways to help those who are being impacted by COVID, whether it's COVID liability, ways to offset input cost, or again, from workforce. We try to gather our perspectives and through our different policy committees. We have a specific small business committee to, again, formulate what we need to go to the General Assembly and advocate on their behalf. Workforce, like I said, is kind of our big thing that we're focused on. Our foundation has partners with a lot of HBCUs to partner on apprenticeship programs. We also have training resources where we take HBCU students and tell them, hey, this is what train them for interviews with employers based on feedback we get from our businesses. So again, it's a wide collection of ways we want to impact South Carolina and make it truly the best place to work, live, and do business.
Yeah, great. Representative Diller, can you chime in on any challenges you see for small minority businesses and communities due to, what's happening in our world today, the war, inflation, gas? What are your thoughts, please?
Well, I do believe that our small and minority businesses will be impacted. I think we've all heard that expression, when America catches a cold, Black and brown communities catch the flu.
Absolutely.
And so we've seen it through COVID, where others were getting sick, Black and brown communities were dying. Mm-hmm. And so in this particular, conversation that we're having, the stress of it all too. We have, this is not a mental health conversation, but coming from the pandemic and now we're faced with a war. And if COVID has not taught us anything, we are a global economy. Yeah. And so I worry too about the mental health of our business owners, everybody. I mean, it has exacerbated over the last 2 years of folks needing help. But I want to say, remain calm. If there's anything that we've learned in this conversation today, is that there are resources. Let's say that we need help. I also want to plug in this space. The Chamber has been great partners, but I also want to plug we heard the CDFI, Community Development Financial Institutes.
Right.
We have several of them in the state of South Carolina. We have one, and they're sparsed out through the state, upstate, Midlands, and Low Country. These institutions are financed by the U.S. Treasury, and they're designed to support disadvantaged and underserved communities and to help them. Some have women's business centers embedded in them, particularly the one in the upstate.
Yeah.
Community Works. And so there are financial resources available. And in most cases, not the high hurdle that you would need to go to a bank. So I want to plug them, and I want people to be aware of the resources that are in or near their community, that there is help to see folks through this phase or this journey of an economy that we're traveling in right now that is really difficult on everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the ports for both of you. We saw challenges last year with the supply chain. Any thoughts or updates for either of you on how important our ports are and how this is going to, how impactful, if we're going to see an impact, a further impact? Well, I can start with you.
I'm happy to jump in. No, one of the things that makes South Carolina a great place to do business is because we have such a strong port in Charleston that exposes us to the world. And like Representative Dillard said, this is a global economy, and we're fortunate that we're able to ship things from the South Carolina producers with such ease. One of the things, going back to the budget, that we were really encouraged to see here at the Chamber was additional funding to the ports to complete infrastructure development at different sites so they can handle all the extra capacity they are coming in. I think I saw a report issued this week that they had another record high month of capacity of tankers coming in, dropping off containers. And there's just so much congestion because they don't have as much, they're running out of room to place containers. And there's a lot of different reasons for that. Again, being able to expand some of their infrastructure, build new yards is going to be crucial, and build intermodal facilities to allow us to transport those containers from the different yards easier. But, we're also having a trucker shortage that we're facing. And that's another reason why some of these containers aren't being picked up as at their normal rate as they would be. So, there's a lot of different ways we can try to expedite this. I worry that we're still going to see congestion at the ports as we continue to face some of these supply chain issues. But, again, the budget funding the ports projects there is one great way. Figuring out a way to get more folks involved in the trucking industry would be another great way too, making it easier for folks to get CDLs. I mean, with such a shortage, I think there's a lot of different ways we can be a part of the solution.
All right. And Representative Dillard, can you jump in here on the supply chain and the importance of our ports in South Carolina?
No, the port is critically vital to meeting supply chain demand. And we're doing all we can to help that process. And as Will said, we hope that the investment that we are proposing to make in the budget will help, and they tell us that it will. So no play on words there, but we're trying to be a partner, and this will definitely help our businesses and consumers. Again, the bottom line, Will talked about truck drivers, critical need. Cannot stress that enough. And if someone here is looking for a job change or know someone who needs a new job, that is one I will tell you to look at. High paying. You can go to your technical schools. You say, well, where do I go to get training? Guess what? We're just about paying for those programs. So this is a wonderful opportunity to have people employed.
Yeah, yeah. We talked about that in the last panel, the small minority business panel. Not only the need for employees, but how creative can employers be to get employees? You know, and it runs the gamut of industries that employees are needed for. We're talking to Representative Chandra Dillard and also Will Freisen with the South Carolina Chamber of Commerce. I want to ask you, Will, about some of the changes that have happened at the chamber. Can you share with us exactly, kind of what's been going on, and can provide any updates, and let us know again exactly why it's important, or if it is, I'm sure you'll say it is, for businesses to be a member of the chamber.
Sure. No, and thank you. No, we've had a lot of change in the last year. I'm new to the team. I joined in December. It was a bit of a homecoming, being able to come back from Washington, D.C. And we talked earlier about the fact that it was awesome to see bipartisan work done on the income tax bill. I can assure you, bipartisan work is rarely done in Washington, D.C. these days. So it's been encouraging to come see the General Assembly, pass things unanimously. But yeah, no, we've had a lot of change. We have a new CEO who is a longtime chamber executive, Bob Morgan. Frankly, I think there are only two people on staff that predate Bob, and Bob's 1-year anniversary is this Friday. Being there, though, is Cynthia Bennett, who is our chief diversity officer, who's been there she's been here for a long time. I'm not going to date her. She wouldn't be too happy with me. And she's recently now been named chief diversity officer, and that's where our foundation is really focused on diversity and inclusion programs, workforce development programs. Again, we're starting to partner with different businesses throughout South Carolina to do apprenticeship programs to high schoolers, continuing our HBCU STEM program that I highlighted, and then also Business Week, where we get students from South Carolina high schools, introduce them to employers around the state, and kind of give them a 1-week crash course on what it looks like as you start that job search. I'll put a plug in. The reason that we think it's beneficial to join the South Carolina Chamber of Commerce, and also your local Chamber of Commerce. And I know Representative Johnson hinted this earlier, and Mr. Brown both hinted, but it's because they have resources that can help you as a small business owner that you may not have access to otherwise. And that's local and state chamber. It's as the other panel talked about, it's being able to connect you, from our end, with advocacy being the main thing we do, is being able to connect you with a representative who, if you're a constituent and have either an issue or an idea, you can go to them and say, hey, I need help with this, help with this loan, or help with something that I see maybe can increase my workforce pipeline. Or, hey, I have a great idea, but I don't know how to take it to that next step. We see ourselves as kind of a middleman who can connect you to members of the General Assembly, but also can work together with all of South Carolina businesses and take their feedback on what the key issues facing our state and holding us back maybe from even being better than we are, and how we successfully advocate on that behalf and make changes to really make South Carolina, again, a place for all to prosper.
Right. You mentioned Cynthia Bennett and working with diversity. What does that mean exactly for you, for the chamber, to have someone that is focusing solely on diversity?
No, we think it's fantastic, and we think it's something that all businesses, not only in the state of South Carolina, but in the country, or if they haven't taken steps to do that, they need to. I mean, we need to have diverse thought. We need to have different opinions. We need to have people with different backgrounds be at the table and share their experiences and figure out how our employers make a more equitable workplace environment, and make sure we're not just, limiting ourselves as to the workforce we can have in South Carolina because of, archaic policies in place or ways that we just don't understand the different challenges different communities face. And so, we think it's a great thing, and we think our Diversity Foundation has taken a lot of steps. Again, as I mentioned, the apprenticeship programs that we take with HBCU students in STEM programs, taking them to different employers. Like I know we've taken them to Nephron Pharmaceuticals here in Lexington, taking them to places like Dominion, I know I'm going to leave off a number of companies, so hopefully if any of them are watching, don't get mad. I just can be forgetful sometimes. But giving them access to leaders over there, and teaching them, okay, you have 30 seconds when you meet someone to shake their hand, look them in the eye, and that first impression really goes a long way. But just kind of training students that may not have normal access to those type of resources. Hey, here's the way to give you your best foot in the door when you have those opportunities. So we think it's a really crucial program that we're glad we're able to have.
Great. Representative Dillard, I want to ask you a couple of questions. We've got about 10 minutes left. We've got more questions than we have time for, so we're going to try to get as many in as possible. What's the current condition of South Carolina roads, Representative Dillard? A bill was passed a few years ago.
Yes, a bill was passed a few years ago, and I was fortunate enough to serve on the ad hoc committee that studied that for a session. And so South Carolina roads are being paved. Let me just say that. And I know it's never the one that you're looking at, because
it's not the road
that you're riding on. I know it's just never that one. but I can tell you that we are paving roads in South Carolina, and our SC DOT, and we're going to pave more roads and fix more bridges. This budget, the House budget, put $1 billion into just that very issue, paving roads, fixing bridges, making corrections to things that are, where traffic is bogged down. And so we're very excited about that. And I know the business community is too, again, because that helps supply get things from the port, get things moving. We got to keep South Carolina moving. But just as a fact, South Carolina is the 10th fastest growing state in the nation. And we have the 4th most roads that we have to take care of in the state. And so we are trying to get in a position. And again, this is the most money. So we got our gas tax working, and we know, what's happening with the gas right now, but we just invested $1 billion. At least we're proposing another $1 billion. And before we leave this conversation, I do want to give the Chamber a shout out and why diversity is important. The Chamber pre-COVID took on the task of championing the reform of expungement law in this state, which we know that returning citizens need to work to. Yeah. And I think the Chamber realized that and encouraged business communities to start breaking down barriers, but they worked with the General Assembly to reform our expungement laws, which allows more people, our returning citizens, to enter the workforce. Also, there is a bill that has come out of the House. It is in the Senate as well, and the Chamber was a big champion. It will give tax credits to businesses who hire ex-offenders, and I like to call them returning citizens because that's who they are.
Right.
We're going to take that X out, returning citizens, and it also gives veterans, those companies who hire veterans and returning citizens, a tax credit for hiring folks in those categories. So thank you to the Chamber for your support on those things.
Can you give us a broadband update also, Representative Dillard, while you are updating?
Sure. Well, I talked to you just when I said very briefly about our state budget.
Yes.
Broadband was one of those transformational investments that we made. We invested, and I hate to quote because I can't remember exactly. I want to say 800 million, but I could be wrong. We need to look at the document. But that was one of the things that we took our $2.5 billion from our American Rescue Plan money that came from the federal government to invest in. So we are serious about broadband and making sure that South Carolina is connected no matter what part of South Carolina that you're in.
All right. Representative Chandra Dillard and Will Friesen. Will is with the South Carolina Chamber of Commerce. You are watching the South Carolina Legislative Black Caucus Minority Business Forecast. We've been talking about a myriad of things, but the topic of the panel today is understanding the H4880 income tax cut. how tax cuts could impact minority communities. We've got about 3 minutes left, and I want to wrap by asking you, Will, if you believe businesses have a role in advocating to lawmakers and decision makers. And then Representative Dillard, could you respond with your final comments and wrap with how important do you think small businesses advocacy is in the lawmaking process?
It is, yes, it is absolutely necessary, because legislators, we don't know what we don't know. And if we're looking at legislation and it adversely impacts small and minority businesses, we need to be educated on that. Perhaps it's just not apparent, in the legislation, or maybe we need to be creating different legislation. All one size does not fit all. And so we definitely need to hear from those stakeholders. Everybody's a stakeholder. If you pay taxes in this state, you're a stakeholder, and we need to hear from you. You also need to be voting. You need to be a part of chiming in to the chamber's agenda. All of the chamber, they have a state agenda each year. The chambers need to hear from you. That feeds to the legislature. So this is it's a process. And so I'm encouraging our small and minority businesses, get in where you fit in. And even if you just feel more comfortable talking to your direct legislator, do that. It's vitally important.
Will, do you believe businesses have a role in advocating to lawmakers and decision makers?
Absolutely. And again, lawmakers, they have so many issues they have to tackle on a day-to-day basis. I mean, you have to, switch your brain and say, we're going to tackle education here. And the next second, we're going to tackle tax policy. So it's tough to hear from, if you don't hear from stakeholders, to really be engaged to how certain bills may impact the community. So, what we stress to our members is share what your concerns are, share your ideas, share how we as the voice of the business community can be united when we go speak to the legislature and tell them, hey, this is going to have this impact on South Carolina. This is going to have this impact on the South Carolina manufacturing industry, this impact on the minority business community. It is vital that you get involved, again, whether that's with your local chamber, your state chamber, or again, as Representative Dillard said, getting involved in calling your elected officials and telling them what's going on in your line of work, what can be done to help your business, what can be done to make South Carolina a better place overall to do business. But we wholeheartedly believe in advocacy. Representative Dillard hinted at our agenda that we do every year, and that's through a grassroots effort. We take about 4 months to travel to our different businesses around the state and get their feedback and really, find out what the top hitting issues for them are. And that's how we've, had tax reform as one of our key pieces of our agenda for a number of years. But workforce and workforce development is right up there. And second chance hiring is a really big piece to that too, as we have a record number of jobs that need to be filled. Getting any citizens engaged and to work is a great thing that we can do and help South Carolina continue to be a great state to do business, but even better state going forward.
Awesome. Will Friesen with the South Carolina Chamber of Commerce, Representative Chandra Dillard, Representative Dillard, Danielle Lake says returning citizens is such a humane way to refer to them. So thank you, Representative Dillard. Thank you, Danielle, for watching. And thank both of you so much for joining us today for the South Carolina Legislative Black Caucus Minority Business Forecast, Understanding the H-4880 Income Tax Cut. We appreciate your work that you do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Again, thank you so much for joining us for the South Carolina Legislative Black Caucus Minority Business Forecast, the second annual Minority Business Forecast. Hey, don't forget to post, share, and tag someone you know that would benefit not only from this conversation, but from the entire webinar. Coming up, we're going to get updates from the Small Business Association. That's coming up next on the South Carolina Legislative Black Caucus Minority Business Forecast. I'm Trey Taylor. We'll be right back.
You've been watching the South Carolina Legislative Black Caucus Minority Business Forecast. Time now for the SBA Update with Kendall Corley. He's been selected to serve as the Deputy Chief of Staff for External Engagement in the Office of the Administrator at the U.S. Small Business Administration. In this role, Mr. Corley is responsible for providing advice, guidance, and assistance to the Administrator and the other agency officials in multiple program areas related to external engagement. Mr. Corley most recently served as Senior Advisor for Public Engagement and Intergovernmental Affairs for the Presidential Inaugural Committee and served on President Biden's campaign committee in many capacities. He's held the roles of State Director in South Carolina for the primary cycle, Senior Advisor for the state of Michigan, and Senior Advisor for the Southern region. In addition to campaign work, he served in state and local government with the South Carolina court system and the Department of Social Services. Kendall has also owned and operated 2 small businesses in the past and understands the value they bring to our nation and economy. Please welcome Kendall Corley with the SBA Update.
Madam Chair, Representative Hennigan, and to all of the members of the South Carolina Legislative Black Caucus for all that you do and continue to do for our state. Thank you for the invitation to talk a little bit about the United States Small Business Administration. The Biden-Harris, as well as Administrator Guzman, have made a strong commitment to small businesses as it relates to our economy, and in particular as it relates to the recovery effort through the pandemic. Last year, 6 million businesses received critical funding through the American Rescue Plan, to include PPP, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, Shuttered Venues Operating Grant, and the Restaurant Revitalization Fund. This year and moving forward, we'll be leaning in and talking more about access to capital. Tomorrow, we have a major announcement on Community Advantage with Vice President Harris tomorrow. I don't want to get ahead of that announcement, but stay tuned and be aware tomorrow there will be a major announcement on Community Advantage. As well as late last year, we kicked off and announced our Community Navigators program. Through Community Navigators, we've contracted with a number of local partners as well as national partners such as the National Urban League, the Black Chamber, with a hub and spoke model to serve many businesses who are startup businesses or folks who want to start business, to introduce and bring them into the Small Business Administration, to make them aware of the products and services that we offer as a government agency to those who want to start a business or to those who may be in business. So I would invite you to go on our website, sba.gov, put in your zip code, and you can find those community navigators in your area. Finally, earlier this year, we announced our Council on Underserved Communities, in which we relaunched our CUC, which is led by Mr. John Rogers of Ariel Investments. Again, underserved communities is a priority not only for this administration, but for our administrator who wants us to be intentional, lean in more to access to capital, to those who want to start a business or to those who may already be in business. Last year, we saw a number of folks not returning to the workplace, but opting to start their own businesses. One of the fastest growing sectors were African American women. So the United States Small Business Administration, we stand ready to assist anyone who wants to start a business, to anyone who may already be in business. We are here to serve you. I would invite you to reach out to our local field office here in Columbia, located at 1835 Assembly Street, Suite 358 in the Thurman Federal Building. We have 68 field offices across the United States and the territories. So again, visit our website, sba.gov, find out who your navigators are. Pay attention tomorrow to our major announcement on Community Advantage. And if there's anything we can do as the SBA to assist you as a business or emerging business, please feel free to reach out to us. Trey, team, thank you all, Chairwoman Hennigan, for the invitation.
Hello again, 2022 MBF participants. We hope that you enjoyed this event and were able to take some useful information back to your business and community. Remember that the members of the South Carolina Legislative Black Caucus are always here to assist you, and you can contact us anytime. I suggest that the caucus host this event because I believe we must do more to help our Black and minority communities. I thank you for participating. God bless you, your business, your families, our great state, and our great country. Until the next time, goodbye.
Thank you for joining us for the South Carolina Legislative Black Caucus Minority Business Forecast. Continue to tag, post, and share this informative session. And please continue to comment. Your questions will be reviewed and addressed at a later date. For more information on today's Minority Business Forecast or the South Carolina Legislative Black Caucus, contact Devin Owens at dowens.sclbc@gmail.com. Please like and follow the caucus on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. On behalf of Madam Chair Representative Patricia Hennigan and the entire SCLBC, thank you again. God bless. And remember, Black business, women business, minority business, your business matters to the South Carolina Legislative Black Caucus.